and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a continuation of the regular town board meeting, which was adjourned last Wednesday. I believe we had talked about all of the old business points on the agenda, and so we will start with new business tonight. And I would like to add to new business discussion of a letter to Black Oak Wind Farm. That's agreeable to fellow board members.
Yes.
So we'll start with an updated clothing allowance policy. Beth said she would research that and has a resolution proposed. I'd like to start the discussion by reading the, I guess, original boot and steel-toed allowance for highway workers. At least it is a former, and the last policy, that was in November of 2009. Clothing and steel-toed boot allowance for highway workers. OSHA requires that highway full-time workers wear steel-toed boots. Therefore, the highway superintendent requests that highway workers receive $100 for the purchase of these boots after completion of their probation period. The motion was made by Supervisor Podofowski, seconded by Councilperson Harvey, that the town provide a $100 steel-toed boot allowance, and upon completion of the current uniform contract, the town provides $300 to each full-time employee per year for a uniform allowance, excluding coveralls. The discussion was that the workers were not using the full service that was being paid for, and the allowance would be included in the paycheck with allowance for steel-toed boots being in first yearly paycheck. And this motion was carried. So that's the, as far as I know, the policy that is in place at this moment. It's the highway superintendent has indicated that this is outdated. And so, Beth has proposed an updated clothing allowance policy. So you want to read the proposed resolution, Beth?
Sure. Whereas the Enfield Highway Superintendent has requested to be included in the clothing allowance reimbursement provided to the full-time Highway Department personnel upon completion of their probationary period, and whereas the town board has determined that the job requirements of the Highway Superintendent are such that proper clothing and footwear are necessary for safety in the workplace, therefore be it resolved that the following clothing allowance policy be observed from this point forward. Upon completion of the employee probationary period, full-time personnel of the Enfield Highway Department and the Highway Superintendent are eligible for the following taxable fringe benefits. Clothing allowance. A clothing allowance in the amount of $300 for the purchase of proper clothing for work pursuant to the department's clothing standards. Work shoes, steel-toed boots. A footwear allowance for the purchase of steel-toed boots in the amount of $100 per year. All highway department personnel are responsible for the laundering and care of clothing and boots worn in the workplace. The town board may consider changes to these allowances at its annual organizational meeting.
Second.
I would like to make one suggestion for a change, if I may.
Mhm.
The
You're
second where-
first.
What?
You're first.
Okay. Whereas the town board has determined the job requirements of the highway superintendent are such that the proper clothing and footwear are necessary and required.
That's good. Yep.
We found that to be, in other instances, ignored, even though they got an allowance.
However, I do believe that the highway superintendent is not required to, wear steel-toed boots. And I would like that noted in the minutes, because I do not think that that is true.
Well, I feel
But
in the case of liability to the town, that if we're giving them an allowance, and it's an OSHA matter, they should be required.
laborers, workers definitely need to be required. I would also like to amend this to say the town board may consider changes to these allowances during the yearly budget process. The organizational meeting is
Too late.
Yep.
too late. Well, it's all right for the whole following calendar year.
Mhm.
I have three corrections and one question. Superintendent is spelled with, there's an E at the end and not an A.
Yep.
Intendant. And that's
Mhm.
first, second, and fourth paragraph. And just clarifying, we clarified that the footwear allowance is per year, but I'm assuming we also want the clothing allowance to be each year. So we should just say that, per year.
$3 per.
Unless it's a one-time thing, but it was my
No,
impression
it's
that this is an annual thing.
Yes, it's,
And so then, because that's the case, I would also suggest, in the paragraph, upon completion of the employee probationary period, full-time personnel of Enfield Highway Department and the highway superintendent are eligible for the following annual taxable fringe benefits.
I move that are there any more discussion? Any other discussion? I move that the additions and corrections be approved.
Second.
Call the vote.
Councilperson Bryant?
Aye.
Councilperson Carpenter?
Aye.
Councilperson McGee?
Aye.
Councilperson Sims?
Aye.
Supervisor Ryder?
Aye.
May I bring one other thing up? We should probably make a motion to do the highway super, and we had agreed that we were going to do this year's highway superintendent reimbursement at the last discussion about it. So should we make a motion to do that?
Well, that's an addition or correction. Make another motion.
So we're
I'm-
gonna correct this policy? Or do we just want to make a motion to?
You want to make a separate motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Separately.
Any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Call the vote.
Councilperson Bryant?
Aye.
Councilperson Carpenter?
Aye.
Councilperson McGee?
Aye.
Councilperson Sims?
Aye.
Supervisor Ryder?
Aye.
That one's gonna go through.
Mhm. Progress.
Maybe it's a page turned over.
Good on that. Okay.
And you had a motion, Beth?
For Buddy's, something you
Buddy.
want to do, okay. So I make a motion that we provide reimbursement for the highway superintendent's clothing and boot allowance for 2017.
Second.
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought that's what we just did.
No.
No, that was on the,
It's
was on
not a
That was just-
reimbursement.
That
It's
was
a
on the first
payment.
motion.
or payment,
It's a payment.
taxable fringe benefit, sorry.
This is a policy for the future. He didn't get
Right.
paid last year anyway.
No, yes,
so
I'm with you
got
now.
it.
I
Okay.
understand, thank you.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
Oh, I think Mike
Mike
did.
did.
You
Well.
you missed your chance.
Darn it. Could be
You gotta be
quick.
quick.
Get you next time.
Any other discussion? Call the vote.
Councilperson Bryant?
Aye.
Councilperson Carpenter?
Aye.
Councilperson McGee?
Aye.
Councilperson Sims?
Aye.
Supervisor Ryder?
Aye. The highway superintendent requested that he be provided with a credit card, and Beth McGee has done some research on that, and I believe provided information at last meeting or not?
I did. I offered to provide sample credit card policy. Buddy was the
Oh.
one that was supposed to do
Oh.
research about that.
Okay, all right.
Do you have it with you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've now found it.
The the second page is the information that I got from the comptroller's recommendations. And then the first page is what I came up with based on that and some other credit card policies that I found to look at.
Was this modeled off of a different municipalities?
It was modeled off
Or
of several.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a thought on the cap of the credit card?
What's our cap on the one that we have currently for the town?
I think it's $10,000, but I'm not sure.
It seems maybe excessive. I don't really have any
Oh,
basis
yeah,
for
I
that,
think
but
it's
you know,
excessive.
maybe $2,000 or $3,000 would be.
I would think,
Appropriate.
depending on the type of equipment that might need to be ordered, 5 would be reasonable, but I wouldn't go any higher than that.
And the purpose for this would be to have a little more of a convenient process when they're doing purchasing, but for these bigger ticket items, that's not something that you just go to the store and
Right.
buy,
No.
so you don't need
Is
the.
this card specifically for the highway account, or is it for the general fund, or is it for both?
Well-
And if it's for both, then who does the accounting and the separating out of which goes where, and then who does the subtracting from the budget items that belong to each of them? Who identifies where each item belongs in the budget and how to subtract it from
I
those
would think it
items?
would be much more straightforward to have it just the highway department.
I mean, how do we do it with the town credit
I don't know
card?
why you have 2 credit cards in one town.
I don't think Ann's credit card has any highway.
No, it's
No.
the
That's
town's
yeah.
credit card.
Right.
It is not Ann's card. It is the town's credit card.
Do you use it
So-
for highway expenses?
No, I do not.
Well, that's-
I've never been asked to
That's
use
my
it for
concern,
highway
is that
expenses.
what do we do if it's?
The
if-
simple thing would be to get 2 cards.
2 cards, right.
That would be the simple thing.
Well, my thought had been to have 2 cards on the same account. If you have a $10,000 limit, then it would make sense to do that. But then you've got two people, if you keep them separate, then it's more accountable, I think. So if you have two separate cards, it's more
Two separate
accounts.
accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, in this situation with grant funding, which I know we're not in, I mean, I've experienced where we would definitely have to have a credit card that's tied to that grant, and you can't go running around spending, out of any other grant. It's just easier to track. Leaves less room for discussion and dispute.
In answer to who does the figuring and stuff, I mean, we have an audit process. I mean, the board audits the vouchers, and presumably we look at them and determine, what expenses are and how much. And so that's basically what this speaks to, that the town bookkeeper and the town board will audit all credit card purchases monthly. I mean, that's
Right.
what we do now.
And allocates them as
So-
well, to where,
No.
which budget.
No,
line.
I allocate,
That's-
Buddy allocates.
So Buddy
The
would allocate.
bookkeeper does not allocate.
So Buddy would allocate his bills as they came in and then give them to the bookkeeper to pay as from the allocation
They have to go, it has to go into the warrant.
into the,
The warrant
Warrant.
that we vote on each one. For the vouchers.
Where you sign all
yes,
initial.
but in the end, when it's all through with us, it comes from him and then gets allocated by the bookkeeper, right? It
The
doesn't.
check is drawn by the bookkeeper.
So how do you know what budget line to address, to put the expenses?
Well,
But Buddy does it
I
himself.
spend many hours on this. Been to school,
So you'll do
asked
Buddy's?
questions.
No, Buddy does
No,
his
Buddy
own.
does
He
his
does
own.
all the
I told
He does
highway.
the
you.
highway fund, she does the general fund.
The way it works now is I do the A fund, he does the highway fund.
Okay.
And he
So
does it all month, every month. He knows what accounts he wants to allocate. He knows the account numbers, or the budget line numbers that he needs to.
So who will allocate the money that Buddy spends on the general fund?
But he can't
He shouldn't
spend
be
his
spending
money
from
on
the
the A
He would only
fund.
be spending from the highway.
Well, it has to be in the A budget. The coveralls come out of the A budget.
Well, that's the
His
question I
salary.
just asked, yeah. I mean,
Well-
if Buddy goes and buys coveralls with a credit card, then who allocates that money in that credit card?
But we
He does.
rent those. That's through a rental service, and that's covered through the A fund, correct?
So he doesn't need two credit cards because he won't ever spend any money on the A fund. He'll only spend money on the highway department fund. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, if he spends money on the credit card on the A fund, who allocates that money and where it goes in the budget?
Whoever made the purchase has to make out the voucher, and you have to have a line item on the top of the voucher.
So he will allocate money in the A fund, and whatever he allocates it to in the A fund, that's where it'll go in the A fund budget.
If I approve.
Ah, now we're getting somewhere. So what's the process of your approval? Where do you approve
A sign on the
that?
bottom, department head.
Okay, so you will be allocating it as well. You will be doing an approval process in the allocation, right? So Buddy will start it and you will finish it. Am I wrong or not?
Guess you could look at it that way.
Well, you need to understand it in some way. You gotta know what happens with this money. Somebody has to be looking at it and saying where it goes to.
Well, he makes purchases that he might make with this card all the time and allocates them to the appropriate lines. And through our auditing process, we all presumably check that and audit that process. The only thing that we're adding to this step is a convenience of being able to order something from something, say, online or whatever, with a credit card.
And every time you see an allocation in that big fat pile of checks that we put out, you know exactly where that goes in the budget and what budget line to subtract it from? You know that?
I think that at the end of the year, we make an
Who's we?
assessment. This whole board is
We don't. We haven't
responsible
ever
for
done that.
all of
No,
this.
We don't do that.
We don't
We've
do
never
it.
done it.
We don't do what?
We don't allocate money that people spend and subtract it from the budget and say, this money goes to this budget line and that money goes to that budget line. You have to, if you allocate $6,000 for goats and you spend $5,000 for goats, somebody has to subtract the $5,000 from the $6,000 and say there's $1,000 left for more goats at the end of the year.
That's what the bookkeeper does.
That's
And
what
we've
I'm
never-
asking.
We've never done,
Well,
quarterly
that's
budget reports.
He-
or even
she
monthly
does it
budget
every month.
reports, which
So
is-
how does she know?
We do get financial.
With
reports.
Buddy's
Yeah.
statement,
But-
how does she know with Buddy's
I haven't
credit
seen-
card statement, where to subtract the credit card's expenditures from the A fund credit card in the budget without somebody telling her where to subtract it? Who's doing that?
On
Is it
top
Buddy
of the,
doing that?
It's on the
on
voucher.
top of the voucher,
Right.
there is a line. She will not pay a bill unless there's a line.
Who-
She won't make the warrant unless there's a
Who
line.
puts the information on the line?
Whoever makes out the voucher, except Alan.
Whoever spends the money.
But you're saying that.
Usually,
So it sounds-
usually.
Can I ask a clarifying question here? It sounds like you're concerned about the highway department spending out of the general fund.
Well, that's,
And it also sounds like that happens in some cases, but rarely. So could there be some
Well, it's very
clarification about that?
consistent. There's very it's very consistent.
Well, it's very
Becky,
consistent.
if we're setting up a policy, you want to set up the policy, when you set it up, with your contingencies covered, so you do it right. Maybe it happens rarely, but why would we set up a policy without it working?
I'm just trying to understand what
Okay,
the processes
that's fine.
are in place and where, the conversation
What I'm
is
hearing
coming
is
from.
that Buddy will allocate
Yes.
all the money that he spends, whether it's highway fund money or
He
A
does,
fund money.
he does already.
So
So
he allocates the A fund
what
money that
I'm-
he spends.
What I'm wondering
That
then
he
is how,
spends.
Right.
how would this be different, aside from the fact that it's a credit purchase and not a direct purchase?
That's
But
what
how
I'm
would
trying
this
to
be different than
understand.
the,
Yes.
what's done currently with invoices and
Exactly,
vouchers?
that's what I'm trying to understand.
It-
There
Would
wouldn't be
would there
any
be a
difference.
difference?
I have to ask clarification. You said early on, you do the allocations or for the A fund. Why does he do anything with the A fund?
Because he gets the bill for the cover-ups.
Oh, for God's sake.
They don't come to me.
So
Sorry.
he allocates the money that he spends from the A fund,
Yeah, I don't
and
think-
you allocate the money that you spend from the A fund. Is that correct?
I guess that's a way of looking at it.
Well, what other way is there to look at it? You gotta tell me, because I can't think of any other way to look at it.
Why aren't the coveralls part of the highway department budget?
I've never got a good answer, or a
I mean, that's just
satisfactory
crazy
answer.
to me. I'm sorry,
to
I have to
that.
say that. That's like,
I've never
It
gotten a
should be a clean A
satisfactory
and B.
answer to that, but that's municipal budgeting.
That isn't something that he's generally going to use the credit card for, because that's an automatic bill that comes, and then
I
the
wouldn't
voucher gets
think
added
so.
to it and it gets paid.
I wouldn't think so.
It's fine with me if he never uses it, but if we set it up so that he can be using it, or any future highway department superintendent is using it, we need to have a policy in place that says what happens with the money and how it gets tracked.
Okay.
That's just part of
That's a
bookkeeping.
great idea.
Well, all expenditures that are paid by a warrant have to have a line attached to them.
Right.
They have to.
Right.
It doesn't get by the town clerk making the warrant, and it does not get by the bookkeeper writing the check.
And they have to have a budget item, a budget line, a budget number that
That-
they get subtracted from.
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
who figures out which budget line they get subtracted from?
whoever puts in the voucher.
Okay, so Buddy will be the one that will be deciding. He will put it on the voucher, and the lady who does the paying the checks will allocate it to that budget number.
Yes, she'll put
So,
against
okay.
that.
And Buddy
line.
is clear enough about the A fund budget as well as the highway budget to know very clearly where to allocate those things on the A fund budget. And this is a question I'm asking you.
I don't know.
Well, why wouldn't we have somebody who knows that answer? Because we really don't want to be telling somebody to just allocate something to a budget that they don't know anything about, that then the bookkeeper is going to subtract from, because you could well have budgets that are all over the place over here in the A fund, and numbers that getting subtracted from this, that, and the other, and they shouldn't have been subtracted from this, that, and the other. Should be subtracted from here over here instead of there over there. That's doing your budgeting correctly. That's how you do budgeting. You put things in the right places.
That's accounting.
Pardon?
That's accounting.
And,
Very different than budgeting.
and,
And, lines can be overdrawn.
I
And
just
we'll
want
get
things
to
to go
that.
in the right place. That's all.
What
I'm
do you-
sorry
Do
to
you
call it
have
budgeting.
an
Let's call
idea
it
of something
accounting.
we could add to this policy to make sure that that there's not problems surrounding possible misuse of budget lines?
Yeah, you could tell me that Buddy's gonna be very clear with everything that he spends from the A fund, where it should come off of the A fund, because there's a lot of weird designations in the A fund, there's a
Sure.
lot of miscellaneous things.
So I
and-
mean, I think that this policy, as was provided by Beth, has a lot of really strong language in there that helps protect the town against unauthorized purchases.
That's not the point.
Then
I'm
this
not
is a-
making that
And,
point
and
at
I
all.
was,
This is a
what I would
policy
like
we
to
need to talk about separately.
suggest is that we also include, as we're, when at number 14 here, purchases must be logged to include the following, that we include which budget line the said purchase should go on, so that there's multiple levels of opportunities for us to, be checking and making sure that the
Well,
right
are we
money.
going to? That's not what I'm hearing. All I'm
I
hearing is
mean,
that Buddy's gonna
we have
put it
to
on,
sign
the
off
bookkeeper's
on
gonna take it
all
off.
of the
We
vouchers.
don't sign off the budget lines. We sign off the expenditures and we say if they're
Right.
legal expenditures or not.
So
We
we
don't
can always
identify where they
compare
go
that
in
to
the
the
budget.
budget.
You can question any line.
And it's not
put
my
at the
job to
top.
question any line. It's my
Oh.
job to make sure we have a procedure that works correctly. That's my job. That's what I'm trying to establish here. So we have a procedure that makes this thing work correctly into the future. I'm not worried about Buddy stealing money. I'm worried about things getting allocated in the correct place so that when they get subtracted over here in the budget, they get subtracted from the right line. That's such a simple accounting procedure, and it's such a given for any organization that does budgeting that I don't understand why it's hard for you to understand the necessity of it. I don't get it.
I think that there are,
Mistakes happen in accounting
Oh,
all
come
the
on.
time.
Don't give me mistakes happen. This is real. This is something that you do
I'm sorry, could you
every
please
year.
stop shouting? I'm not finding this to be a
Sorry.
respectful environment.
could I make a point, please? We're talking about a credit card policy. What I'm perceiving you to be talking about is a more generalized policy about how we do our auditing and bookkeeping process.
Yeah.
That to me sounds like a separate policy altogether.
yeah.
And if we don't actually have a policy that dictates how we do that, then perhaps we should talk about that. But I think we have lots of policy within New York State law about how we conduct ourselves as a town and how that process should happen and what we're expected to do by the comptroller's office even. I think that there are plenty of protocols that are in
Yes.
place, and if we need to make those more clear to all board members, then that's certainly a worthy endeavor.
Well-
But this is a credit card policy. That sounds like a much broader
I
policy
agree.
or concern of
Yes.
how we're figuring out allocating
Yes.
money.
Well, I'm sorry if you can't see how it relates to the credit
Well-
card policy, but it does.
I'm not saying it doesn't relate to the credit card policy.
Well, you just said it didn't.
No, I didn't say that. I said that perhaps we need a broader policy on top of this in place that dictates the process itself of how we allocate money and who is
Okay.
responsible for that.
So if we don't have a process for that, why would we just keep putting more garbage on top of the garbage that's already there, instead of cleaning up the garbage that's already there and taking it to the dump, instead of putting more garbage on top of it, instead of taking another non-workable policy, putting it on top of this non-workable policy and say, well, that one doesn't work.
We don't have
So
a
let's
policy.
just put a non-workable policy on top of it because that one doesn't work either.
Because I don't believe that we don't have a policy.
Well, so why should we be worrying about it?
I mean, I'm not
Why should
necessarily
we-
worried
why
about
should-
it.
Well, you're just telling me you're saying it's a larger issue that we should fix. I didn't know that we needed a larger issue to fix. All I'm saying is that why doesn't this policy with a credit card fit into our existing policy? Where does it fit into our existing policy?
Because
And
I
you're
think
not
that
telling
we
me that it
learned
fits in
that we
anywhere.
don't have a credit card policy in place.
No, we don't.
Right, and
It's
so
an
that's
allocation
why,
policy, it's not a credit card policy. It's the same thing with expenses that Buddy would spend in any way on the A fund.
Yes,
If he
you're-
spends
you're
A fund
absolutely correct.
money,
You're
who
absolutely.
allocates that money that he spends
That's
in the
right.
A fund?
this
You-
policy that I was asked to put together is about the use and protocol with regard to using credit cards. That's all. Did you read the policy?
It's not just regards to using credit cards. It's spending money.
Right, but that's all I was asked to provide.
Right. And I'm saying that it's not complete without an understanding of how he's going to allocate the money that he spends on the A fund.
Then I would appreciate if that's an important piece of this policy, that you research that and that you put it together with.
I don't have any desire to research. I'm saying that we need, why should I research it? Why should I
Because
get
you're
that?
concerned.
That's, it's your concern.
Important.
Well, I'm saying, why isn't it your concern? And why isn't it your concern? And why isn't it your concern? Why don't you care whether the money that Buddy spends gets allocated correctly in the A fund budget? Why don't you care about that? Does that not mean anything to you?
I think that, I mean, I
That's
can only
a
speak for myself,
presumption.
but I'm quite interested in ensuring that town funds are used appropriately and efficiently.
Right.
And I don't have
This is a
any
use-
inherent reason to doubt that that's not happening.
Oh, you don't.
I don't.
You haven't been here long enough.
Well, just on the basis of, because people spend money, then they will spend it inappropriately. I'm not willing to make that leap.
They will track it.
You know, as Beth has
inappropriately.
mentioned, there are processes in place that go into our budget, and we can't be checking each and every purchase to the budget line and making sure that they're done every single purchase. But
You're
we can
saying
do
that
it on a
nobody
regular
does
basis.
that then? You say nobody has to do that?
No, I think that we do,
Okay.
and at least annually, if
And
not
what
more
do you
often.
think I'm
please.
asking about?
I'm not quite sure
I'm
anymore.
asking about who does that.
And
I'm asking
I
who
believe that Anne
allocates.
said that it's a combination of her efforts, of Buddy's efforts, along with our bookkeeper, as well as all of us.
No, we don't allocate it.
Well, we sign off on the vouchers.
We don't
They have
allocate.
budget lines on them.
We don't
and we
allocate.
can look at the budget.
We don't allocate the money. Signing off on the budget is not allocate. Do you understand the difference in the words?
I do, thank
Okay.
you.
Do you know what allocate means?
Yes, I do know
Okay.
what allocate
Well, think
means,
about it
and
then,
I also
okay?
understand that we all have a responsibility to support Anne in the budgeting
And
process.
do we
which
allocate?
I believe
Do
is
you and
when,
I allocate?
Could you let me finish, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my understanding, and please, anyone, correct me if this is not the case, but when the budget is being created for the year, that the allocations are made at that time, and we all have an opportunity to support Anne in making sure that that's done correctly. Is that not the case?
That's
That
right.
is the case,
Okay.
right.
Yes.
So that is what I would like to do.
And then when you spend money, you have to allocate it to a line.
Yes.
Don't
and
you
I-
understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
And I believe that Anne just clearly explained how she does that and how Buddy does that.
She
I'm
said
not sure
that
where
Buddy
this is
writes on the paper, this goes to line X, right?
Yes.
Okay. My question was, how does Buddy know what line X on the A fund budget to allocate that to? That's a simple question.
I think it would probably
How
be
does-
because he's familiar with the budget.
With the A fund budget.
I would hope so.
There's an
You would
entire
hope so.
book.
Well, I don't
you know,
hope
he's
so.
not here.
I want to know if he
I'd like
does
to
or not.
talk about this credit card policy that's been drafted, because that's what's
That's
on
what
the
we're
agenda.
talking about. And we're talking about
We're
how to
getting into
allocate,
allocations.
how to
That
allocate
seems
the money that he
different.
spends on the credit card. You don't understand that?
No,
Very
different.
different.
He
Voice,
allocates the money on the credit card the same way he allocates the bill that comes in.
Right.
Exactly the same
And I'm
way.
asking, how does he know to do that?
We actually, there's a
Well-
whole process. There's a giant book of all of the lines and what we
Right.
can designate them for. We can make new ones using the same budget line protocol.
Right.
They are specific, they are named in our budget lines, they're
Right.
specific. So if there, anytime, I mean, Debbie has said, anytime any of us are concerned with anything, we are welcome to come here. We're welcome to ask her questions, we're welcome to look at things. The vouchers are available for us at the end of the month for us, or before the meeting. We can scrutinize them. We can also go back anytime we want to if we have questions about them and look at them.
And-
I do that.
And
And
how
what-
do you know that Buddy knows where to allocate money on the A fund? How do you know that?
You know what we could do? We could bring that budget line book or bring the budget itself or the financial reports and look at the specific lines and how they're labeled. And that's available to us every time we fill out or sign the vouchers. And if you want to check those lines every time on all of Buddy's
That's
stuff,
not what I'm saying.
you're welcome to do it.
Yes.
That's how
I'm
you
saying-
would know.
I'm saying, how do you know?
Yes.
That's how you,
That's-
I'm telling you
you
how you
learn.
would
The
know.
answer is then, you don't know.
Like, don't
You
yell at me.
learn. You learn.
I will talk
You
more
go
about
to
it.
school, you learn. You read.
No, you don't, Ann. Not when you're,
Oh, I'm
not
sorry,
when you're,
that's what I do.
not when you're in charge of the town budget.
Well,
Not when you're in charge
that's
of the money
what
that
I've
these
done.
people pay in taxes.
Maybe somebody else wants to do differently, but that's how I've done it.
That's
I've read, I've gone to school, I call other bookkeepers if I need to.
And
That's how,
and how do you know that Buddy knows where to allocate money on the A fund? How do you know that he knows
I've
where to
watched him for 4.5 years.
So you're telling me that he does know?
He appears to know
He
between
appears
the
to
A
know.
phone,
Okay.
A fund and the DA fund.
And he knows where to allocate it, what lines on the A fund money to allocate expenditures to.
It's been my observation. He's correct.
Okay. Well, that's great. If you feel like you're very comfortable with his allocations because you have experience with it, then that's an important thing to understand. I haven't heard you said that just till now, though.
But now you're more comfortable because I said
I'm much
this.
more comfortable knowing that you oversee the process. Because I don't feel like Buddy's awareness of the A fund, it's not his job to know what the A fund budget is. If anybody, it's yours and our bookkeeper's job to know what the A fund budget is. And if I know that you have oversight over the process of his allocations, I feel much more comfortable with the process. But that's not what you told me before.
I see.
I do think, though, that we are neglecting the idea that just because the town supervisor at this time does the vouchers and does, puts the budget together, that can be done in many different ways. The bookkeeper can do the vouchers. I mean, in any number of ways that this town board determines or that the town supervisor appoints to make the process done in a different way. However, we are all responsible for the fiscal responsibility of this town. This whole town board is. We all are. So to act like there aren't steps and protocol to make sure that money is being allocated or spent from the proper lines, that's up to, if you have a concern about that, I recommend that the budget book is online, or you could even look at or bring the financial reports and check every one of the A fund things that Buddy puts together.
That's not my job.
It is our job.
No, that's not my job.
It's
My
it's
job,
our job
my
to
job is
double
to
check
make
those
sure
things.
that it happens.
Then you shouldn't sign the voucher.
I may-
If you don't know it,
There are vouchers that I don't
you shouldn't sign
sign.
the voucher.
You're right, but that has nothing to do with the allocations. Whether or not we spend the money, and I can agree that the expenditure is correct, that doesn't mean that it will get allocated correctly, though. And what I'm concerned with right now, what I'm talking about, is the allocation of that money spent.
So where
That's
would you
different.
like to see this conversation go?
I would like to have a good understanding of how money that Buddy spends in the A fund gets allocated. And I'm getting closer, because Ann is telling me now, from what I understand, that she has overseen this process enough to know that Buddy does it correctly. And is that a correct reading of what you said?
Yes.
And that he will likely continue to do it correctly. So, to me, that's better. I feel more comfortable with it.
May I ask
don't-
a question? Traditionally, the highway supervisor, elected position, always had the ability to draw on the A fund without talking to the town supervisor?
For certain items.
What items?
I mean, that to me is just
All right.
insane.
I don't have the budget, I just have the expenditures. Which, oh yeah, every line. Utilities for the highway building are out of the A fund. His salary is out of the A fund. His benefits are out of the A fund.
And does Buddy himself pay for any of those? Does he actually write the checks for any of those?
No, the bookkeeper writes the checks. Garage contractual is about the highway garage. And it seems to me that highway signs are out of the A fund, but I'm trying to, I don't have my annotated budget.
Well, Virginia, my understanding of what you asked is that what money out of the A fund does Buddy actually buy? What-
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
And
No,
I
you
still
aren't.
don't, I still
Oh,
don't
I'm not
understand
telling
why
you.
any expenses
Okay.
related to the highway department, including utilities, whatever, maybe personnel has to come out of the A fund, but those other things should be in the highway department part of the budget.
Refuse and garbage comes out of the A fund.
And who pays that bill?
Who pays? The town board pays that bill.
Who makes out the check?
The bookkeeper.
Okay, so that's not something that Virginia just asked you about. That's not what she was asking, in my understanding. She was asking, what A-fund money does Buddy actually write checks for?
Doesn't
None.
ever write a check.
None. He never writes a check.
So what A-fund money
And he
does,
never signs a check.
what A-fund money does Buddy request checks for?
Now I gotta go through this again.
Well, does he request money for his salary?
He doesn't have to, because
No,
we
I mean,
budget
that's
for it.
administrative, that's what I'm saying.
So what Virginia just asked was what money Buddy requests money from the A-fund for, from the bookkeeper, that he says, pay this much to this person. Is
Doesn't
this
sound to
really,
me like he's requesting to pay the utilities, requesting to pay for.
what is he requesting to
The
pay?
town owns the buildings,
Yeah.
so the maintenance of the buildings and the utilities for the
Well,
buildings.
look at the last
That's not what
warrant.
Virginia just asked.
Look at the last warrant.
She was asking about
that
past procedure.
past procedure.
I thought that you were asking about what has been done in the past,
Yeah.
and maybe we should
I
you
don't
know,
know what's been done in prior
think about
years.
doing that or
It's just-
evaluating if it's
I
working.
mean, I certainly know an administrative budget, if we own the building and we pay the utilities,
That's
but
not the same thing.
not the same thing as his highway budget.
So bringing
He
this
has
back
any
to the
control.
credit card
It's not
policy.
the same thing as money he spends out of
got
the
a
A budget that he
suggestion.
requests checks to be written, either.
So can I
say something?
can I make a suggestion? I don't know how we do that. No, we don't do that.
You what?
Sorry. I'd like to make a suggestion in terms of this credit card policy that perhaps a way of resolving some of these issues could be that we could write into our policy here that if there are indeed two different accounts, credit card accounts, that is, one for Buddy to use, one for Ann to use, that their respective cards are only paid for out of the highway budget and the general fund, respectively.
That's what I said in the beginning.
How,
That's
is
the
that,
only
would that,
two funds we have.
But we can
Right,
make
but
a
make it
determination
such
of
that-
what are appropriate purchases to be
Right.
made.
and that there wouldn't be
So there's
crossing
nothing
there,
out of the A
because
fund. There
this
would
is
be a
really
reason
gonna
for
be for pre-approved purchases.
This is a something for anybody who, I mean, it's not really related to budgeting, it's related to
No.
procedure.
Right.
Mhm.
It's accounting.
Yeah.
It's not budgeting, it's accounting.
So would that
I've seen
satisfy the
credit card
concerns?
policies up the wazoo, and this seems like a good one. I mean, other than we decided capped at and so on.
Sure.
It's a procedure for anyone who has the ability to request the use of a credit card and is authorized to use a credit card would follow, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
I think
that's
so.
where I see.
And
it.
number 14 gets into
Well, how to do it, I mean, proper
gets
logging.
into the vouchers.
Well, we can add to that
Sure,
The
you can add to
appropriate-
that.
The budget line.
budget line.
Yeah. And I would
That's a
also
good idea.
add the, what specific item was purchased.
Well, it's,
Purpose.
I mean, it
Oh.
says purpose for credit card use, but that, I think, I'd like to be more specific about what the
Change that
object
word
or
then.
item is purchased.
What word?
So you
D.
change purpose to,
Items purchased?
yeah. You know, like we'd want an, I guess what I'm getting at, we want an itemized receipt.
so items purchased
Itemized
instead.
receipt must be provided.
Itemized receipt must be attached.
So you would add that to D.
I thought that was somewhere
D.
else.
I think
Yeah,
that's.
I am-
That's
in
someplace
the-
else?
It might be.
In the agreement on the other side is, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, we say I provide the original receipt and payment slip and a signed and certified voucher.
Well,
No, I don't see that.
I shall provide the receipt, slip, and voucher at the first available moment in order to permit the town to pay the credit card in a timely manner. That is not our policy. They are not prepays. Credit card is not a prepay. It has to be authorized at the meeting. And that's not an easy task. So that, in the town of Enfield, is not something I can sign.
What?
I shall provide the receipt in order to permit the town to pay the credit card in a timely manner.
Well, then we can change it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just here for us to walk
Yeah,
through and
right.
make changes.
And then under the cardholder signature agreement, no purchase shall be paid by the town unless I provide the original receipt and payment slip and a signed and certified voucher.
Where is that?
Just
About the middle of
above.
the page.
And then I understand that only pre-approved and emergency purchases are acceptable. Better look at that one.
So we want to get rid of, I understand that no purchase shall be made by the town of Enfield unless I provide the original receipt. We're getting rid of that one.
I don't know why you'd get rid of that one.
Oh, I thought you wanted it
No.
gone.
I think it was the one following that.
Yeah.
And what's the
Oh, I shall
issue with
provide
that
the
one?
receipt. Slip and voucher at the first available moment in order to permit the town to pay the credit card in a timely manner. Well, to me, that didn't say they were going to go make a purchase and then provide the receipt. If we already, if they.
It already said it has to be
We-
pre-approved. or-
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be pre-approved, then what this is that if the credit card bill comes, that the receipt and the bill and the voucher need to be provided
together.
so we can provide payment for it as soon as possible. That's what that says to me.
Oh.
If we need to say it more specifically, if there is different wording that would address concerns about what that says, then that's great. Suggestions welcome.
I had some suggestions for the first page, the policy, not the agreement part. And I'll need some help on the status. I know there's been discussion about procurement policy here for the town, but my
Yes.
understanding is that we do not currently have one. Is that true?
Yes, we have one.
We do have one?
Yes.
Okay.
It
Good.
was quite recently updated.
Great.
Needs to be updated again, but we have it.
Okay, so there's a couple places, or maybe just one place, in number 12. Well, starting with number 9, we refer to the town's procurement policies. Is there more than one?
Well, yes.
Yes, okay, so policies is good. Then in number 12, we refer to the purchasing policy. So should that also say procurement policy?
And it shouldn't be district.
And yeah, so then also I noticed the word district was used in number 11 and in number 12.
The
And I think
town?
that should
The
be changed to town. Also 10A should have a capital T for town.
Yes.
And I would possibly add to that, I mean, we say it a number of times, but maybe worth saying again. So for 10A, no purchases shall be made which are not proper town purchases that have been pre-approved.
Sure.
Or, I mean, since like a proper town purchase is not defined necessarily anywhere else, so
By
or
whom?
I guess we could say that are not pre-approved town purchases.
By whom?
Town
By
board.
the town board.
So we
Well-
can't use a credit card? I didn't
So
know
like
about
what
that.
what I was thinking as I was reading through this was like at our meeting last week, we approved funds or approved for Buddy to use the highway funds to do the garage door stuff. So
No.
no, that
No.
example.
It's gonna come out of the A fund. He was authorized to get the job done. When the
Okay.
bill comes, it will not be a highway bill. It will
Okay,
be-
so forget what I said about the highway bill, but would that be an example of a pre-approved purchase, right?
Yes.
He brought a
Yes.
quote, we said, let's do it.
Yes, that's a
So that's a
pre-approved.
pre-approved purchase.
Why would you have a pre-approved policy for a credit card?
Well, that was one of my questions.
Do you mean a pre-approved purchase that you would then make
Why
for a
would you
credit card?
need, why would you require pre-approval for credit card purchase?
Well, it would, to me, that would depend on what we're saying that it can be used for. So like, we pre-approve that the highway superintendent knows what equipment and stuff he needs for the highway department in our budget. We budget a certain amount of money, this is what he asks for to get to buy the things that he needs to run the highway department. So if he needs to buy something within the budget we've already provided for him, and it's expedient to get it with a credit card, then that's already pre-approved.
That's your definition of pre-approved.
No, just in that instance. Like if you and I want to travel, do a class or something, we need to come to the board first and get approval for that expenditure, right?
Well, first of all, it has to be in the town budget. Or you're gonna figure out some way to pay for it.
Right,
Then there's a form that you have to make out.
right. So if we were gonna use a
Pre-approval
credit card for
seems
that,
a little strong.
why
It
aren't
has
we
to be
using-
budgeted.
wouldn't we just use generally the term that we, for everything, means our pre-approval processes for each particular type of expenditure? We already operate with, like, if we wanted to, like you said, if we went to the Association of Towns, we come in, we ask the board, we have make a motion, we have approval that we're gonna spend that money. Then if we're gonna use a credit card to do it and purchase that registration online, it's pre-approved. That's how that process happens. It's pre-approved. We pre-approve money that Buddy is gonna use to run the highway department. If he happens to
In the
use a
budget.
credit card to pay for it, it's been pre-approved.
Okay.
So what about things that he uses a credit card for that aren't pre-approved?
If they fall
Or
outside
do you mean
budget
like
line
not in the
items?
budget?
What's that?
You mean not in the budget?
No,
Or
in the
outside of budget
In the budget's
lines?
fine.
I
But
think
that's
what Beth
a-
is saying
Well,
is like the
that's
fact
a
that
crime.
the budget is approved.
That's a
No,
crime.
It's not a
Is-
crime, no. You're not understanding what I'm saying.
I mean, I think what Beth was just saying was like that by nature of being in the approved budget, that then purchases that fall under those budget lines.
That's not what pre-approved means. That's a completely different thing.
I mean, we can decide what
Pre-approved
this
means
means.
that you say I have something to buy, and you ask someone if you have approval to buy it. That's what pre-approved means.
Right.
Pre-approved does not mean it's in the budget, therefore it's been pre-approved. That's not what it means.
Are there certain things that would fall under that category? That's what I understood you to be saying, Beth.
He gets a budget to run his highway department, to buy the equipment that he needs to have to run that facility and do the work he needs to do, whether it be equipment for road work or whatever. So that's within his purview with the budget. He gives a budget request, we determine, okay, we trust the highway superintendent to complete his job that we expect him to do with the budget amount.
And he knows that already.
Right.
So
Could
why
you-
would you put anything in about pre-approval?
Could you say instead of pre-approval, say budgeted? That have been budgeted by the town board?
Then he,
Been appropriately budgeted by the town board?
then who's, yeah. The whole reason for the process that Virginia was talking about before, this allocation process, is that when he spends money, he gives you the receipt for it, and he says, here's what I spent it on. If he puts it into a budget line item, then you know what budget line item. If he gets over here and he says, I spent $1,000 on the A fund, I don't have any budget line item to put it under.
It's not gonna be approved.
It's not gonna be approved, and that's the approval process. That's it right there.
I just know that, if I may say, when I've been working out of a big budget with other people, and we're looking at line items, that we forget the salaries and fringe that are fixed, but the other line items that might be moved around to meet certain needs, I mean, you discuss it, but the bottom line is the money's there, and if whoever granted the money permits you, us being the town board, permits you to move it around, then you should be able to go ahead and use it for that position or that purpose, and not have to go through. I mean, it depends how closely you want to monitor. I mean, sometimes some groups monitor their monthly expenditures, you know, like they have performance reports on each line item to see what they're over or under.
You monitor it when you put it back into the budget and subtract it from a budget line item that says, that's what I spent it on. That's the monitor process, that's the accounting process, that's the allocation process, that's what does that.
There is a sentence in here that says, I hereby accept the responsibility and assume the obligation to pay for any debt incurred by me that violates this policy, and that has been rejected by the town of Enfield.
Which is fine.
I guess another way of saying it, I don't understand your concern about allocation of the A fund, but you're not concerned about allocation of the DA fund at all.
I
I
am
don't get-
definitely concerned about allocation of both funds. The whole reason why I was talking about this stuff is because the credit card thing brought up in my mind, how are we allocating this money? Who does it? And are we doing it well? And are we doing it correctly? And bad town board member as I may have been over the last 4 or 5 years or however long I've been here, I just suddenly realized I haven't been paying any attention to this. And I don't know if these things get allocated correctly.
Well,
And I'm wondering if Buddy knows enough about the A fund to be able to allocate A fund money well and correctly.
What's the difference between knowing about the DA fund and the A fund?
Because he has an integral part in developing the highway fund budget. He does not have an integral part in developing the A fund budget. You have that. So that's why I was looking for you to have some oversight in that process, and hoping that you did.
I oversee the whole budget.
I do.
don't
Do you-
differentiate between the DA and the A.
Do you
when I oversee.
Do you oversee the allocation of the expenses that go out as far as where they come out of the line items on the budget?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for, exactly.
Did you have some other edits?
I did, yeah. Are we ready to keep going
Are
there?
we down to 11, or we're gonna skip back up?
I was gonna go, so we did number 12, we said cost out purchasing policy, road procurement, cost out district, road town with a capital T. So number 13, I'm wondering, you said, we say notation shall be made next to each expenditure for which a credit card was used for that purchase. Maybe this is answered in number 14, but when we say notation, I guess I'm wondering, what does that need to say? Is it the items that will,
It's
that will
on the
list under
voucher.
14?
Nobody
Oh,
has a
okay.
voucher here. You line it
No.
all out. The credit card was used 4 times in 1 month. It was used in 4 separate purchases. Now, one purchase at Walmart might be 10 things.
Mhm.
And so you might have to divvy that one up
Between line items.
Right.
between line items.
Okay, so we don't need to clarify any further about what notation is needed there.
That's how the
It would just be the standard process for filling out a voucher.
filling out a voucher.
Great. So,
Should we add notation shall be made on the voucher?
is that implied in the
Well,
audit claims?
the previous sentence says audit claims, which is those vouchers.
So for number 14, we changed D to an itemized receipt, right? And then I would add a G for budget line.
I think D we were changing to items purchased. So
Okay.
this is like what this sounded like to me is a separate log.
Yes,
is
it
kept.
does.
Yeah, and I think that's
I'm
a
not
good-
doing that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It
Hold
sounds
me in
like
violation of the policy.
a good check and balance.
You're gonna have to spend a lot more money to get that log made. We are not a size of a town that requires that separate accounting feature.
Well, no. I'm talking about a log that could be just kept in the filing cabinet with the vouchers, and the highway department can keep their own log and submit it to the town board, so we can more easily know what credit card is being used for. We can track actual credit card use without going through all of the vouchers and seeing which ones were paid for.
So it
with
makes it
credit card.
easier for you and harder for me.
If you are the only one who gets to use the credit card, I guess so. So, but if we want to have a policy that allows for us to have better tracking methods and to understand whether it's even useful to have a credit card, or if there are, if there's a better way of doing something or purchasing, then having all of the credit card purchases in one place is a good idea.
It's there, on the voucher,
Mhm.
in the file, one a month.
Yeah, I hear you, but it would be great if they were, kept like in a notebook, so,
Or a spreadsheet.
or a spreadsheet, sure.
So is that a no on the budget line then? Or are we reconsidering all of number 14?
14. Oh, the log things.
Yes.
What were you suggesting for G?
Budget line?
Yeah. Okay.
But you want to add a G.
Mhm.
Yes. Or yes, that comes after F.
Budget line
Keep it straight.
must be stated.
Sure. And it.
Oh, I got a quick way to get around it.
Okay. In 14E, names of all people, I would add for which expenditures were made.
Mhm.
E?
Mhm.
Yep.
14E, just adding the
Oh.
Grammar.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then I just had a couple other thoughts that may or may not be appropriate to include in here. Just from my experience with other types of businessy credit cards, there's a couple other things that might come up. Most credit cards now give you, points or bonus something or whatever.
Can't
Does
have
that,
those.
we can't have those,
We
great.
should not have those. It's recommended by the comptroller's office.
Okay, I was gonna say then we would need to decide what to do with
No
those, but
reward
let's
points
just
and no
not.
cash back.
Great, so that takes care of that.
Good.
In number 5, we say we reserve the right to rescind credit card privileges from anyone that has been issued a town credit card. Presumably that would be, certainly one outcome of inappropriate use of a credit card, but do we want to specify if a credit card is rescinded from somebody, is that like for a year, forever? Is there any coming back from that?
I guess the
is
person
that
could
maybe that's
request it
too
again, and then the board could vote on it again.
Okay. Do we want to define what an emergency would be?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too.
What number is that in? 3?
I guess, yeah, pre-approved or emergency.
I have to send a certified letter.
That's a good example.
Would that be considered an office expense or postage expense?
Where would I take it out of, you're asking? Which
Yeah.
line would I take it out of?
Or you don't have to tell me what line, but can you tell me that how would you generally pay for that?
Without a credit card, I would have to use my own money, put in a receipt, and ask for reimbursement at the next board meeting.
And so, but the expense of that would be considered part of postage,
No, we don't have a postage.
supplies?
Let me
Are
look
you
at my choices.
getting at like maybe only
I'm just saying
emergency
we-
would only be for certain?
I wish
I
I'd
don't-
brought
line
my.
items
I just
or-
guess I don't know if it's something that we would normally, that you would normally spend money for anyway, that it's not necessarily an emergency. If it's something that we have a budget line we've approved for certain contingencies like that, then why is that an emergency?
Oh. Okay, I've got to remember the definition of, this board right now's definition of emergency, something that's not budgeted. I have to remember, that's something new I have to remember. If
Well-
this is, no, I would not, I can't imagine a town, a credit card expenditure that I would make that was not budgeted. Can't imagine. I'm not saying it might not come up, but I can't bring up anything right off.
So do we want to remove emergency purchases from this policy? And just have it be for pre-approved purchases only?
Well, isn't that getting, this previous conversation right here, that's getting back to what's budgeted?
Well, I mean, it isn't, I'm not saying that emergency, outside of an emergency is what's already budgeted, but what your general expectation to be able to spend in the line of your work, I would think would include a certified letter that you already use a budget line to pay for something like that.
Yeah, I
So
do.
whether you use a credit card or you don't use a credit card, it's not something you have to come to the board and say, I have to send a certified letter. Can you please approve this? And everybody vote on it. You know what I mean?
Okay. I'll have to remember.
What would you, I'm curious, what do you think we might have as an emergency expenditure that could be used on a credit card? So maybe it just isn't
Yeah,
necessary
maybe we
to
strike
have
it
the word
if we
in
can't
it.
come up with
I,
a scenario.
because emergency purchases get into going over the budget and,
Well, the only time I've ever seen one, if I may interject, is something that probably would not even concern us if somebody gets stranded somewhere traveling and they have to use a different form of transportation, or they're over the budget because they had a flight delay, they this and that, or an extra cab fare, that kind of thing, and that,
Or what about a new furnace?
yeah.
You know, I mean, and again, we'd have
oh,
to figure that out
Yeah.
with, you know, how we're gonna pay for that if we've gone
Same
above
thing
and
as what I
beyond what
talked
we.
about, you'd have to figure out how you
Yeah.
pull something out
But I
of
would-
somewhere. But it was an emergency at the time.
I wouldn't use the credit card to buy a furnace until it was talked about here.
Oh,
I
I'm
myself
not
wouldn't.
saying that, I mean, that's like that might be an emergency expenditure if we're beyond our budget line in
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And, you know,
Yeah,
I don't know that we'd use the credit card to pay for a furnace anyway, but we'd have to spend the money if it was winter and it was a town building, we'd have to figure that out. But, so the question is, do we need emergency purchases in this, or emergency in here, or just pre-approved purchases?
it seemed like pre-approved would be adequate for the duration.
I wanted to, go back to 14 if we could. So we listed here, did we decide that D was going to be an itemized receipt or items purchased? Because if we're talking about this being a log, then the itemized receipt would be with the voucher. If this is a log, then it would be, we'd want to know what items were purchased specifically that would go in the log.
I think that makes sense to say items purchased rather than receipt.
Items purchased. Other additions?
On the cardholder agreement page, in the second paragraph, I would change purchasing to procurement. And add an S to sales tax. I wasn't sure if it needed to be specified, but, you know, that the card cannot be used for alcohol purchases. Maybe that's already
Yeah.
in town policy somewhere, but.
I don't think it is anywhere.
It
And
says
I've learned that at school.
But, I'm sorry, Ann.
You shouldn't use town credit card for alcohol purchases.
Where was I? I'm wondering, number 15, if an annual audit is frequent enough.
Is often enough?
Yeah, often enough. I mean, I personally prefer to look at credit card purchases at least twice a year. Because you can then,
Yeah.
I mean, you can see if things are, I doubt they
Sure.
go awry, but then you can see things, get a better picture.
That's fair, yeah. I'd say twice a year seems fair.
Semi-annual.
Pardon me?
Semi-annual. And then on this back thing, what did we decide about, I understand that no purchases, I understand that only pre-approved and emergency purchases are acceptable? Was that the one that?
Did we agree to strike emergency?
We agreed to strike emergency on the first page, so we should
So
if
then-
it's in this one.
And pre-approved is budgeted.
Well,
The definition of budgeted.
Unless they came to the board and said, I need this, and I'd like to,
It's not budgeted
and
for.
it's not budgeted.
Then they'd have to justify it and tell
So-
them how they were gonna
Right.
move the money around.
Yeah.
So then, if
Take
we
care of
agreed
it.
for them to spend it, it would be pre-approved.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean budgeted.
Right.
Right.
Why don't you say budgeted or pre-approved?
It's pre-approved by nature of being in the approved budget.
And,
Pardon me?
and then will we add a sentence?
If they're spending something that's within a line
Yeah.
that is already pre-approved in the
Yeah.
budget, then it's
Fine, yes.
Add a sentence, in no event shall I purchase alcohol with this credit card.
Oh, yeah, that's a good place to put it.
I don't know if anywhere in this order.
Is medical marijuana approved? Is that right?
There's no
No
policy on
cigarettes?
it. There's no policy on it in Enfield.
No instance.
I mean,
I
how
don't wanna
specific do we
touch
need to
that.
be?
Yeah.
Just picking on alcohol. Just bring up a
Yeah,
point.
no, that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, the reason it came to mind is it's an official alcohol policy at the place where I used to work that did permit actually quite a bit of spending on alcohol, and so that was why I was thinking about it. I would think would also be inappropriate to. And the reason I bring that up specifically is because, so for example, when you travel, right, you're gonna get a per diem, you're gonna, have dinner. Some people have alcohol with dinner. That's fine with me, but the town shouldn't pay for that. I wouldn't think that like tobacco or medical marijuana or any number of other potentially illicit items would be like embedded within
For dinner.
town business.
Right.
like a dinner. So,
Um,
so I wouldn't actually
cigarettes
specify
could be.
those out.
I mean, if someone's traveling, they could just as likely be able to purchase a glass of wine as they could to buy a pack of cigarettes. You know, I mean,
As
really,
part of a meal?
if they have a credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. Do we already have a policy on alcohol purchases?
We haven't gotten to that place in the procedure.
No.
No, it's only
Alright.
about usage.
Usage.
It's only about usage on the
Zero.
job. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
So if we need a sentence in
And
here.
the procurement policy does not say anything about alcohol.
Huh. Maybe we just
Well,
need
then
a
maybe we
townwide
can just
policy that just says
let it
no
be for
town
now. I
funds
mean,
will be spent on
I don't-
alcohol.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like if you put it in the policies
policy.
and procedures,
Yeah. That covers
that would be
everything.
the more appropriate place
Yeah.
to put it.
However, it might make sense to have it in here as a sentence, if we're going to make that policy, to say, as per town policy, credit cards may not be used to purchase any alcohol with
Yeah,
town funds.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we want that to be
But would we need to
17?
have that policy already in place before then we would be able to pass this one?
It depends. Do you want to make a motion to make a town policy?
No.
We're working on town
Where,
policy.
that's on the agenda in June
Well,
or
but I mean,
July.
number 9, we're saying policies, procurement policies, so that gives us room to add to those policies,
Right,
um,
right.
which would kind of automatically update this. That's all I have on that.
Okay, you want to redo this, and I'll put it on the agenda for May? Clean
Do you want me
copy.
to give it, are we happy with it? Can we vote on it with these changes?
Not until I see a clean copy.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy with it.
Are there any other issues we can bring up with this?
That's what we're discussing.
I don't have any more issues. I'm happy to make another copy of it.
I'm happy with the changes. Do we have to wait till June? Or May?
Anne said she'd like to see another
Okay.
clean copy of it.
And then, has anybody gotten any information from Buddy on who to get a credit card from?
Yes.
Oh, you did?
Yes, he would like to get, all of our banking is done at the Tompkins Trust Company. He would like to get one from Tompkins Trust Company also.
So, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But I guess
So-
you have to authorize him to do it, but, yeah.
I would think we should have our policy in
Yeah.
place before we
Right.
make that authorization, so if we're
And
not ready.
I
And then
agree
we
to put
can
the
get a-
policy together. I'm not doing any of the other stuff.
And then we can put a second credit card on the account.
He would like his own account.
I'll check into that, but
I think for accountability, it makes more sense to have two separate accounts. It really does. I mean, to protect both card users.
Mhm.
It's easily extrapolated that way. You have to extrapolate it. You have to.
I'll see what the trust company says about that.
No, I wouldn't want to share a credit card account with something else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would either.
You're not paying the bill.
That's not the point.
The point is that I would want to know that, you know, especially if accounting isn't gonna be done until before the board meeting if someone's made an expenditure of $5,000 and someone else has made an expenditure of $6,000 and you have a $10,000 limit and you're sharing a card. You don't want that problem. And I'm not saying that that is definitely going to happen, but it would seem to me for better accounting that you would have two separate cards.
The next item on the agenda, unresolved highway budget lines for 2014, 15, and 16. This has come about as a result of the highway superintendent on more than one occasion feeling that money has been stolen from the highway account. So I was prepared to go over this, but I am really unclear what Mr. Rollins's problems are with especially the 2014 budget. So I don't see how to proceed without his presence, unless someone else knows precisely what his concerns are. Which brings us to a letter from to Blackhawk Wind Farm.
You need a copy, Ann?
I
This
gave
is
you
you.
a copy of the
No,
one
this
in
is me,
Enfield.
this is you.
Oh, there's another chance here.
The one on top is the one that Beth sent.
Oh, here we are. Here we are.
I'm not sure.
Here we are. Here we are. This goes in this pile. Okay. So, Beth, you have suggested other additions?
Well, I took your letter and then I took stuff from a conversation that I've had with Guy, and kind of meshed them together in how to do some wording and expectations. At first I thought that it might make more sense, since there's a lot of information to relay under the escrow section, to put them in two letters, but he didn't think that was necessary. So, it's a long letter, but this is just, you know, some of what you put together, some more. The other thing is, it felt like it's hard to write a letter personally about this and to take it all on, you know, as you're the person presenting the information, when we should be speaking as a whole board, and that the language should reflect that more. Because we're all responsible for making the decision to write this letter.
Do you have a problem with doing it that way, Ann?
Oh.
So you're saying it would be signed by the board
Yeah,
rather than just
exactly.
Ann?
Yeah, I mean, I just think
Oh,
it
you want
would be
everybody to
more
sign it.
comfortable as well.
Oh.
I know that it's, you know, this issue is contentious amongst the board and itself, and that it might be
more appropriate if, rather than have it just be from you, that it be from this whole board. We make a decision as a board to do it, then the group should follow through.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And I personally think we should go over the letter as a board as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a structure, and if there are points that need to be made, then definitely we need to discuss them.
So has Guy seen this letter? Your
No.
version?
No, I just, like I said, we brought it here for discussion, and then the board, before we send it, can, and with comments or changes, then we can send it to Guy and get his comments and recommendations.
So you think we can ask for a completed current application?
I think that we talked about that. I thought that was in the list that you put together, actually.
How could you not vote on an application if it wasn't?
It's here. It's already been submitted.
Well, partially. It's not fully submitted.
I mean, I think that when we had
Well, I would
discussed it.
certainly want Guy to weigh in on that.
I think when we had
I would want him to too.
discussed it, we had decided that the information, a lot of it was just inaccurate at this point, and that it was appropriate to ask for an application with current, accurate information on it.
There's a lot missing too.
This letter is not saying that we're going to begin the review process. It's saying that if they're I mean, the law has basically done its job. It has made it so they have to follow a process in order to
Right.
get approval or
Right.
prove that they can do this. And
Right.
so if these are the things that we require of them to show minimally, then we need them to at least show us that they can provide these, and if they can't, then
Well, I think some of these have been accepted by the board. And I would want to do some personal research and then run it by Guy.
I'm more concerned about the ones that haven't been submitted yet.
well, no, so I understand, like, there are some plans here that we've received, but what we've asked them to do is submit everything in total. So everything is together, we're absolutely sure, just like this last line here says, please date and submit all documents required by this notice at the same time, so there's no question of their finality. So we're absolutely sure that the documents that they send us are the ones that they know and are saying, this is all we're giving you, and we accept it as that. That doesn't mean that they're approved, it just means we've received
But if
them.
they've been accepted, they've been accepted.
Would that
Okay.
prevent us from asking for them again as part of this final package?
I would want to research that. and-
Because I would think, I mean, certainly if they're done by them and they haven't changed and we've accepted it, then it should be relatively straightforward to add that to the package. So I don't see a problem with asking for all of the documents all at once. In fact, I think that will be the most, the simplest way for us to be able to evaluate it.
So,
And for there to avoid any confusion about whether or
Yeah.
not the final package has
Get
been
rid of
delivered
all
or
the-
not.
Get rid of anything and just you've got the current,
Yeah, and then there's no
everything.
more, oh, and this and this.
Yeah.
so
Either
I'm
have it or
happy to
don't.
put an email together with our comments and copy everyone on it. and send it to Guy. And then he can respond, and everyone can see his comments on that. So whatever comments we have here, I'm happy to orchestrate that. So we
Thanks,
want
Mike.
to check with Guy and be sure that it's appropriate to ask for the, all of these things in their totality.
Do you have other,
Was that a yes on that? I wasn't, I mean, I'm not sure that I'm just not
Are we
familiar enough
okay
with working
with
with
me
the attorney, what's
that?
necessary to
I
ask
was
him or
gonna
not.
say, do we need a motion, or we just
I-
say, okay, do it?
Well, no, I mean, this is a work in progress.
Yeah, work in
so-
progress, I mean, I think, yes.
But we have to have a letter first, right?
Well, yeah,
Right. so-
but what we're doing is going through and addressing our concerns about it and
Right.
questions. So if you have concerns, please share them.
Right. Well, can we read it and go through it? see if it
Sure.
makes-
Yeah.
You want me to read it?
Be great.
All right. I will read it. Dear Marguerite, at the March 8th, 2017 regular town board meeting, the Enfield Town Board determined that as the application for the wind energy permit by Black Oak Wind Farm was initiated in 2009, a timely finalization of the application is now necessary. The items listed herein must be submitted to the Enfield Town Clerk no later than, in order to comply with an Enfield Town Board resolution dated October 26, 2016, and the Enfield Wind Energy Facilities Law, and to avoid the expiration of the application for a wind energy permit by Black Oak Wind Farm. If these items are not received by this date, the application for a wind energy facilities permit will expire the following day.
Now, let me ask you a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel more comfortable if we deal with each item as it goes along, or do you want to read the whole thing, then go back?
Let me read the whole thing. A completed current application, a detailed description of the plan including location of turbines, substation, and all other elements of the development as it stands currently, as well as the exact specifications for the turbines that will be used on this project. Fire and emergency plan with county all hazard mitigation sign-off, community relations and dispute resolution plan, decommissioning plan, landscaping plan, invasive species control plan, lighting plan, if necessary, a blasting safety and management plan. The establishment of a decommissioning fund of $180,000 per turbine or such greater amount that is reasonably determined by the town for each wind turbine and/or wind energy facility comprising the project. Decommissioning funds shall be retained for the life of the project and shall be provided in the form of surety bonds, letter of credit, cash, or other security instruments which shall guarantee funds for decommissioning. A letter from Rich Teeter confirming that the substation will be allowed on his property or that he is willing to sell the property, said property to NYSEG, or if NYSEG will not accept his substation on leased land. Confirmation in writing from NYSEG that this project may be located on leased property if Rich Teeter is not willing to sell the property to Black Oak Wind Farm. A letter from Don Gunning regarding the precise siting of a turbine on his property, and it's contested whether that's actually been received or not. In addition, approval from the Department of Environmental Conservation is required and must be submitted to the town of Enfield for the following. Speedies permit, SWIP plan, SPCC plan, dust control plan, soil and erosion and sediment control plan. Please date and submit all documents required by this notice at the same time, so there is no question of their finality. The board resolution also stated that there may be other documents required as are deemed necessary. Black Oak Wind Farm may reapply for a wind energy facilities permit if this application is expired. Escrow. Further, in October 2016, Black Oak Wind Farm put $34,500 in the town escrow account, bringing this account into compliance with the Wind Energy Facilities Law of 2009 and the Developers Agreement of 2010. As the escrow was in compliance in early December, plans were submitted for further review by our consultant, Labella. Comments on 2 of these plans were received on December 14, 2016, and comments on the remainder of the plans were received on January 11, 2017. Notification was sent to you on January 6, 2017, demanding that Black Oak comply with the developer's agreement by bringing the escrow account current by January 31st, 2017. No payment has been received. Subsequently, further review costs have been incurred and paid by the town of Enfield in February, March, and April of 2017. All of these costs are chargeable to Black Oak Wind Farm per the developer's agreement of 2010 between the town of Enfield and Black Oak. Due to these charges, the escrow has once again become overdrawn. As of whatever date, the amount is, and then the amount, we should make sure that we have the amount that's due on the date we send the letter. Per the developer's agreement, the escrow must be replenished within 15 days of this notification. If payment is not received by the required date, the town will commence collection action. If the town is required to bring suit to collect any deposit or review costs, the town, if it succeeds in obtaining a judgment, settlement, and/or other resolution against the developer, shall be entitled to recover its reasonable attorneys' and experts' fees and expenses incurred in connection herewith, together with any related court costs and expenses. The Enfield Town Board appreciates your immediate attention to these matters.
So, can we go through it?
Yeah.
Piece by piece? I would say, I don't know what position Marguerite holds right now in relation to Black Oak. I know she's working for another company now, so I definitely would send this more than just to Marguerite. I would think we'd want to send it to the president of the wind farm, at least, so that he had a chance to know in timely manner that it would be there.
So we want to CC that?
Yeah, well, I would do it to
Send a
Peter
copy
as a
to both.
main.
Peter is the president of.
I would
Yeah.
send
So
it,
you don't want to send it to Marguerite?
I would send it to both Peter and Marguerite, but make them both principals. I mean, in my eyes, they're both principals.
But
Do they
you want
use
a
that?
copy sent to Peter and a copy sent to Marguerite?
Does,
Do we have a separate, or do they just get, because?
No, I
well,
think
yeah,
they should-
is that
I think
address
they should
used
each
for
have
the
their own
board as
copy,
well?
yeah.
Sorry?
Is that address used for the
Yes.
board as
Is
well?
it?
Yes.
Okay, so they would just go
That's
to one place.
that's the address of Black Oak Wind Farm.
Okay.
So then, when you say a completed current application, I don't know, is there anybody else that has things on the first paragraph? We don't have a date on it yet, but
No.
it seems like we have to come back to that.
I have 2 annoying things. The board resolution, since we're being really specific here, probably we should state what resolution that was, like with the number.
Oh, number.
I don't know what the number is, but I'm sure we
Right,
can find that.
yeah.
And then we should add in the second to last line, I think it should be wind energy facilities permit. Seems to be what we're calling it throughout.
Second.
Yep.
So add the word
Yep,
facilities.
yep.
That's all for that.
Thank you.
So when you say a completed current application, basically what we're saying is we want a completed application, and some of these things beyond that are parts of that complete application that we're now stating more details we want, right? Is that-
How do you want to word this?
Well, that's fine with me. I'm just for my own understanding, I just want to make sure that I understand.
Well, I'm not,
what we're saying.
I just I'm not dictating how we word this,
Maybe
so
you
if
say a
there's a
completed
different,
application, which must include.
Which must include, I really like that, yeah.
completed application, which must include the following.
But would things like the letters from Rich Teeter, like, would that,
That actually is in the wind law.
It is.
that would be part of the application?
It really should be, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The leasers'
Mhm.
names and addresses are supposed to be in the application.
Yes.
Well, more than just their names.
It says names and addresses.
We'll get to that in a little bit, I think, but, a detailed description of the plan, including location of turbine substation and all other elements of the development as it stands currently, as well as the exact specifications for the turbines that will be used on this project. The thing I would add to that, and I don't know actually what the exact place is, should be, but, let me find it myself here. If you were to look at page 8 in the wind law, this is, it's Article 3, Section 1.
So start again.
Article 3, Section 1, number 12A, it's on page 8.
Article 3. Is that what you said?
Yeah, section 3. You said page 8. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So number 12, you said?
Number 12, it says,
12A.
construction information, this is part of the application.
Mm-hmm.
Information pertaining to the construction and installation of the wind energy facility, including at a minimum the following: a construction plan, blueprints, specifications, and similar construction documents duly sealed by a New York State licensed engineer or architect depicting the sequence, construction methodologies, methods, and manners of proposed construction, times of operation, site and access controls, and safety and security plans. I don't think we have that. Marcus, is that something that you've seen anywhere? I haven't seen it anywhere.
Blueprints, yeah.
And I think what I remember Marguerite was saying was that they would do all this stuff once they had the wind
Mhm.
permit.
Right.
And then they would get all this stuff together for the building permit that they would need from Alan. But this is actually asking for it in the application.
Mhm.
Uh,
So would we want to say detailed construction information as per section 12 of the Enfield wind law, rather than specifying these things, because the wind law,
Well, that's
certainly-
more specific, definitely, yeah.
but
I
is
mean,
that how you want to word it? Rather than put all of these things in there from the wind law?
Well, a lot of this information, location of turbine, substation, and all the other elements of development, is actually in the EIS.
Right,
So that, there's nothing wrong with having that.
right, but
Because there's been some changes in that, so it would be great to have an updated
that's what I'm asking.
sense of what we're doing. It just, that particular line just brought the awareness to me that we haven't really asked for 12A yet. And I mean, the fact is, we're required by the law to ask for this. If you go back to the first sentence in this section, it says, it's under Article 3, permits and permitting process, and then it says Section 1, application requirements.
Right.
And it says an application for a wind energy permit shall include the following. And that's item 12 on.
And you don't think it's in the red folder?
I mean, this is, Alan's gone, I guess, but,
Well, she has the red folder. Alice.
Alice has a red folder.
Not with me. It's in the file.
Well, I've never seen it anywhere. Maybe it is, but when did you get what's in the red folder? What's the date of when you got what's in the red folder?
I don't know. It's that application years ago.
So it isn't.
It's not current.
It isn't current.
It's been in
So
the file for
It
years.
can't be the same, Ann, because they've changed.
Well, my question is, can you ask for, according to this law, can you keep asking for a new application? Can you keep asking for a new application?
This is not a new application.
We can ask them to complete their
This
application.
is just one
and
of the,
abide by
one
the
of the
law.
things that's supposed to be in the application. And if it hasn't, if what they're doing now is different from what they were doing 9 years ago, then this says we have to have of what they're gonna do. It has to be current. You can't say, well, you have what you're gonna do 10 years ago, 15 turbines, so that's fine, we don't need anything different. You can't say that. And Alan
Well-
wouldn't accept that. He
So
wouldn't.
do we wanna say, at the end of, excuse me, something like as well as the exact specification for the turbines that will be used on this project, as reflected in,
Well, I would make it a separate line.
Okay.
Yeah, it really are two separate things.
okay.
This is very specifically related to the wind law, and one of the lines in the wind law, I mean, it's construction information. It's not a descriptive
Okay.
picture of the project. It's I mean, plans and blueprints, specifications signed by an architect or engineer.
I've seen the
Yeah.
red folder, I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything
They're very
like that.
specifically to exactly what you're gonna build, so.
what would you think about adding maybe another bullet point that would be quite broad, but stating something like, and anything else that is required in section, or Article 3, Section 1A of the wind law?
Well, no, I think we have to be
We
more
want
specific.
to be as
Yeah.
targeted as
So
possible.
I
I'm
think
just,
we need to be
just
specific,
going through
yeah.
it and seeing in that section, section 3? Yeah. What
Article 3,
things
Section
are
1.
not included in this list here. So, the communication impacts, is that included in the impact statement already that we have?
I think that's in the EIS.
Okay.
I think they've done
And so we've asked
studies
for
of
the
that.
fire protection plan, the shadow flicker study has been done, the noise so environmental studies are already done. So, let's see. That's required by seeker. So construction information. And we're asking for wind turbine. And so plot plans would include the locations.
That would include
correct?
your second bullet point, I would think,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I think going above and beyond with, getting the
And
the
so
blueprints
detailed-
and
Blueprints,
with the
signed
seal, I mean,
architectural
that's,
blueprints, yeah. Haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah,
Right,
they are
but-
two very, I mean,
Yeah.
they're different in the wind law, and I think we need to ask them separately in our request as well.
So do we have the list of each and all of the property owners yet?
It's
The
in the
adjacent
red-
property owners,
it's in
that's
the
in the
red book.
application, okay. So we need updated application, or applicant information. That would be included in the completed current application. Adjacent owners, we've got parcel information is the location, project description. Now, what I can do is, in this wording, I can change the words that are here to be specific to what they state in the law.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah?
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's more clear that way.
And I can
I think
refer
Guy
to the
would
law.
be happy with that.
I'll refer to the law.
Yeah, you
that's
could refer to the specific section.
But there was something missing, so the construction information needs to be included.
That's 12, yeah. And some of what's in there, some of what's in the EIS is included. Some of the things that this 12 asked for is included, but it's not, it's very sketchy and it's very incomplete.
Well, it's up to them to determine that when they submit it. It's up to us to determine it when we review it.
Well, I'm trying to give them a shot for it, but
Well,
I
that's
mean, at
what
this
I'm
point,
saying.
they're so far off that I don't even think they're
Well,
close. So-
And if, we're asking for the whole package all at once anyway, so it may be the same as what they've already submitted, and then it would be up to us to decide if
Yeah,
that's
I don't know if
appropriate.
I don't
Yeah.
know if they've done all this yet. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
This is months and months of work.
All right, so what else you got?
Well, we keep going on the list. Fire and emergency plan with county all hazard mitigation sign off. They have done something toward that. I don't know that I'd say more in relation to it right now. So I probably would just leave it be. Community relations and dispute resolution plan. I actually have 8 different community dispute resolution plans that I picked out before the meeting today. All of them from Black Oak dating back to 2009. The most current one is February 2nd. And if you,
Of this year.
of this year.
Okay.
If you actually compare what they're asking for in number 11 of the wind law with the most current one, it's not really in compliance. The most current complaint resolution plan is not in compliance with this. We could make a point of saying that, or we could not make a point of saying.
It's not our job to do that. It's our job to review what they submit against the law. I mean, that's one of my problems, is that we keep saying, oh,
Helping
well,
them
let's,
out,
right,
right,
let's read this again, let's read this again. No, submit your application and then we will review it.
Which is fine with me, I don't have a problem. I just wanted to point out to the board that at this point, they don't have a submitted dispute resolution plan that's in compliance with our law.
Well, that's up to them to determine. The law has been available to them since the date it was voted on. So they know what they need to do. And so if they can make a decision which one of these dispute
Well, and
plans that they've
becomes,
made.
then it becomes all the more relevant, the conversation you had with Ann, to ask them to submit everything all at once,
Together.
dated
That's
together,
right.
so that we know
That's right.
that whatever current one they're submitting right
That's
now
what they
is
deem
the one that we
what,
want. Right.
We shred all the others.
all they're
So-
gonna do.
You think that they don't comply with number 11?
With the latest one that they submitted does not comply with number 11, in my reading of it.
And which part doesn't it comply with? Independent mediator or arbitrator?
The application will include a proposed, and I have underlined, complaint resolution process to address complaints. So the operant word there is complaint resolution process. And complaint resolution means that they resolve a complaint, not that they address the complaint, but they resolve it. The complaint resolution procedure that they have right now, or the dispute resolution procedure, has a lot of information about how to address the problems. It has very little information and nothing that resolves the problem, that says we will resolve it, nothing that holds them to a resolution. It only says that we will try to resolution, is all. Then if you go on into it, the process may use an independent arbitrator mediator and shall include a time limit for acting upon any complaint. There is no time limit for acting upon a complaint in their current complaint resolution process.
So let me ask, should we hold their hand further and include a line in the letter that says, please read our law very carefully and make sure that everything that you submit to us is exactly as you think, is the final offer,
You just answered that yourself a minute ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean.
Right, I mean, it sounds like kind of what you're doing is reviewing to see if this meets this, and it doesn't sound like we're at that.
Marguerite
yet.
knows that. I've had conversation with Marguerite, 6 phone calls
Yeah.
at least, about the complaint dispute
Yeah.
resolution plan. One of the reasons we have so many different plans is because it started with John Rancich in
Try to
2009, and it's developed, and at one point with Peter Bardaglio, who's the president, he said, we're not doing any of that stuff. We won't do it. We're a corporation. You can't make us. From that, 2 years ago, they have gradually taken a step and a step and a step toward the process of saying, well, maybe we'll do a little bit, maybe we'll do a little bit more. At one point, they actually had a complaint dispute resolution procedure for one issue that was much more helpful, much more generous to the people that live nearby than the current one that they've submitted. The one that one of the ones they submitted last fall was much more generous. The current one is taken out all of those generous procedures and said, we're not going to do any of that. So I think they're pretty aware of what they have put in the process, and I think they know what they're doing, and I think for whatever reason.
It seems to me like the best thing that we can do is refer as specifically as we can to our existing law. I mean,
There's no
without
reason why
going
you can't
above and
say-
beyond
You certainly
to
can
say,
say,
the sections.
You can say it
and-
specifically for that line, or you can say it at the top, please pay attention to the existing law and the language of it, so that you really understand what is required here.
Right.
And it's not really, I mean, yes, we have to interpret the language, and yes, we have to do it in context with legal and with our consciences. But at the same time, we don't really have an option as a town board to do anything other than what this law says, and this is what
Yeah.
the law says.
So it sounded like Beth was, when you were gonna update this letter and refer to the specific sections of the law that refer to that, so like, for example, landscaping plan, Article 3, section.
I will just use the wording
Yeah.
for that.
Okay.
And then, if you want, like I said, I can put a sentence
No,
in
I
there
don't think that's
beforehand
necessary.
that says,
But maybe can we square away the language here, because number 11 in the law is calling this a complaint resolution plan, and in this letter, we're calling it community relations and dispute resolution
Yeah,
plan.
it's actually dispute resolution is what it is.
Is that?
It says complaint resolution.
Is that gonna be different than
The
the complaint
law
resolution
says
plan?
complaint resolution process, and it says a complaint resolution plan.
As being the necessary
That's what I'm
items.
gonna
So
refer
I think
to.
we should probably use that.
The title of the section.
Would be great, yeah.
Yeah.
They, when they put out their first EIS, the FEIS, they had in Appendix U, they called it the Community Relations and Dispute Resolution Process. So we kind of started calling it that instead. But
Everything's community.
The law does not refer to community
No,
relations.
it does not. What's next?
I don't have anything on the decommissioning plan right now. I mean, we've obviously been up and down the barn on that one. But what we would be asking for would just be for them to submit it. The same with landscaping plan, invasive species and lighting, and blasting and safety. And if anybody else has any thoughts about those, that's fine. The decommissioning fund, again, we've been all over the map for that one too, and I think we just need to see their final submittal on it that says what they want to do. I mean, they know what we need, they know what we want.
Was there a resolution that spoke specifically to the board making a decision about $180,000 per turbine?
I believe I'd have to research it. I didn't bring
I
it
would like
with
to
me.
refer to that in this.
There was definitely an agreement, because Michael Miles did a lot of research on it and came up with that number. And I think
It
everybody
was
was
last
pretty
September or October
comfortable with it. And it all got settled.
in the board minutes.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It's my recollection of the time frame.
And then cite that resolution in
Mhm.
that bullet point.
The next one, I wanted to be sure that we got the language correctly, because I think that's important.
Mhm.
I've got
So
just
it's a letter
real quick
from
two
Rich-
edits on the previous bullet. We should just capitalize town in the second line, and then the last line of that longer bullet, guarantee with 2 E's, not a Y.
She's a stickler for those capitals.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you.
Well,
That's good.
I've given up. I laud you for,
See how long I last.
yeah, see how long it lasts.
Yeah.
But I,
Okay, yeah.
please
Sorry,
keep
Mike,
it.
please go ahead.
Yeah, I just cut and pasted this from the existing letter, so.
So the next line is a letter from Rich Teeter confirming that the substation will be allowed on his property, or that he is willing to sell said property if NYSEG will not accept this substation on leased land. So that's two options.
Mhm.
The third option that Marguerite was saying she hoped would happen is dealt with in the next line, which says confirmation in writing from NYSEG that this project may be located on leased property if Rich Teeter is not willing to sell the property to Black Oak Wind Farm.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure that what we have in that line maybe doesn't need to be connected in some way with the line about Rich Teeter, because I'm wondering if whatever, they're not going together, and I need them to go together, because I need to know that whatever NYSEG says, and they, NYSEG may say, sure, we'll put it on leased property, and they may bring us a letter that says, from NYSEG, we will put it on leased property. Then we go back to Rich and we say, what's going on there? And Marguerite may say, well, our current contract with Rich says that he's leasing this property. I would still want a letter from Rich saying that his current contract is an agreement with the conditions of the lease and the locations of the lease and the size and everything else involved with the lease that NYSEG is willing to execute in order to put their substation in. I think at that point it needs to go back to Rich Teeter with Rich's approval as well, saying that yes, this is in keeping with this lease agreement with NYSEG and Black Oak is in keeping with my agreement with Black Oak in terms of what property I will lease and under what conditions. Does that make sense?
It does make
Yes.
sense. I would appreciate if you could come up with some wording for that and maybe reconfigure those things.
I have a question. I've been more and more curious why board members are absolutely so focused and concerned about where the substation is.
Because you can't have a wind farm without a substation.
There you go.
That's why.
So why do you care all these points about it?
Well, because it's our job to know where the wind farm's gonna be. And that's in the wind law that says we have to know ahead of time where the wind farm's gonna be. Part of the wind farm is a substation. So if we don't have any clue where the substation is gonna be, and we give them a permit without knowing where the substation is gonna be, we are very much in derelict of our job, of what we're supposed to do.
What,
in
what
improving.
is the big fat, impact of exactly where a substation?
It just has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere.
It has
right?
to go somewhere.
Right.
What's the difference of quarter mile, half mile, 100 feet?
Now we're getting to it. The difference of a quarter mile or a half mile is that all of their submittals say it's gonna be over here. If they move it over here, their submittals then have to change. If their submittals have to change, they may have to change enough so that they legally may have to do an entirely new seeker plan. They may have to do an entirely new environmental impact statement or whatever. Somebody has to decide at that point if they have to. If we don't do this by the letter of the law at this point, there's a whole lot of people sitting out here saying that, boy, that's a slam dunk. They just broke the law 6 times from Sunday. Let's just put into something, let's put in a lawsuit to the judge and he'll say, yeah, boy, this town board really blew it and didn't do their job. If
So you
remember-
think the placement of a substation,
Yeah, it's a big deal, Ann.
it's a big deal?
It's a
Why?
big deal
Well, it's a legal
because
conflict.
all the
Yeah.
wires from all of these turbines, huge pieces of wire, come back to this substation. So they have to change locations. Every one of these wires now has to go through other people's property in different places. It's a huge deal.
I mean, it's absolutely necessary for the
Yeah.
You
project to
can't-
function at all. I mean, turbines, in theory,
Oh, I
you could
understand
move
that.
a turbine from one
I
property to
understand
another,
that.
but the substation's gotta be
Within the
there.
context of the
But-
laws that exist, it's a big deal.
And it sounds like there's questions about whether or not the substation is able to be located at all. So
That's my
that's why
concern.
we need to be really super clear
You
about,
think they
about
haven't-
that.
Got that figured out?
If they did, they'd easily be able to provide for us the documentation that
Yeah.
they need to provide for us. There would be no question. There wouldn't be any debating it. They wouldn't stand here and have an argument with me and ask me the same basic question you're asking me, which is, why do you care about our legal issues?
They already,
So-
they already figured it out, Ann. They already did, and they submitted a supplemental EIS. And we said, fine, let's do the supplemental EIS. Substation in a new place. Wind towers in a different place. Let's do it. We did it. We did it for 6 months, and we got all the information, and we're ready to go. And Mark Reed came and said, whoops,
Kidding.
throw that one away.
Change it.
We don't want to do that anymore. We want to go back to the original. Okay, but in the original, the substation is still on Rich Teeter's land. And if Rich says it can't be there, and if you don't have any legal right to use the land, you're not gonna have a substation in this land, so where are you gonna put it?
And so we will have gone and permitted this process if we ignore that. And then they would have to change that place of the, or the location
Well,
of the
then
substation.
we put ourselves in an incredible legal bind at
God.
that
Yeah,
point.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
Everything
not
has to
going
move.
to
Yeah,
do that.
because we
will
just
establish
really-
this first.
We just ignored a whole sorts of state regulations by doing that, so I can't see us, we can't do that, I'm supposed to anyways.
Because of all the underground and huge wires,
Yeah,
just if it's 50 feet different,
well, it's not
It-
50 feet, Ann, it's on another guy's property way over here, it's not 50 feet.
Here's the question, just like
Is it?
you just stated, they were gonna put the substation somewhere else, right?
They had a piece of property to put it on,
Right,
yeah.
and
they
so
did,
what
yeah.
did they have to do in order to get approval for that?
They had to change the seeker, they had
Right.
to
They
do
had
a
to do more work
supplemental,
on the seeker.
a supplemental environmental, like, they had to change the whole process that they went through for 6 years.
Right, and so if we're just to permit outside of that, and then they can't put it where it's supposed to be or is in the plan to go, then it's gotta go somewhere else in order for them to build the project, if there's a legal issue about it. And then, so where are we then? How do we force them to do that again if they're already permitted to do this?
My concern, my biggest concern right now in this whole process is that we follow the law. Because if we go too far on one side and break the law, these guys out here have every right to sue us, and I would expect them to. If we go too far the other way, Black Oak will have every right to sue us. And if I was Black Oak right now, and I'm not saying this is the case, but if I was sitting in that chair that Peter Boneglu sits in, I'd say, what can we possibly do to make them do something illegal in the town of Enfield so we can sue them and get our money back? Because I think that they are completely gone with this project now. I don't think they have any expectation that this project's gonna happen anymore. I think if I were them, I would say, how can I get my money back? That's what I would do if I was in their position. Not to say that that's what they think or that they're doing, but that's what I would do if I was in their position.
I'm not
Certainly
arguing with you
wanna-
at all, Mike.
What?
I'm not arguing with you at all. What I'm trying to do is restate it so it's not so confusing.
I just wanna
there
be
between
really
why
careful.
this is an
I wanna
issue.
be really
Totally
careful
clear.
that we try and stay
Protect us.
within
Right.
the letter of the law as much as possible, because otherwise we're putting the town at risk.
Mhm.
That's all.
So, could I, let's see, is there wording that we can come up with right now? Or do you think that you
Not from my
can
brain, you won't get it tonight.
finesse some in the next couple of days and get it to me?
Marcus was good at that stuff.
No, but you're on the board and you're gonna sign the letter, and it would be great if your wording
At-
was in here.
When my brain is working tomorrow morning,
Okay.
in the morning.
I'll
I
give you
think
till
about it.
Friday.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I get tired of this stuff.
Uh-huh, I hear you.
Okay.
All right, so
can we
Mike
move
is
on?
going to provide wording.
Can I just say, Mike, and when you're doing that, I think, obviously being as specific as possible, but I had noted to add here to say that this specific project may be
This.
located on whatever specific leased property is.
Yeah, I think that needs to
I
be
think we-
very
Yep.
clearly.
We need to be really specific. I don't think there's any
Exactly.
argument
Yeah.
there.
The next line is a letter from Don Gunning regarding the precise siting of a turbine on his property. And I understand why you say received, and yet I can't find any letter from Donnie Gunning that says that. I see a copy of Donnie's lease.
Well, I've got a
He,
copy of
He
Donnie's
gave us
letter.
a
He
letter.
brought a
Right
letter
here.
to a.
That would
To
be
the
great.
board meeting. Yeah.
You can't have my
And I
copy.
actually think it's on, isn't it on the website? I think
It might
it's
be.
on
Part of the
website.
minutes?
Yeah, I
Isn't
thought
that
it
what
was.
it-
Yes, I
Dated
think it was.
November
I think it was
9th.
added,
Yes,
yeah,
it was.
it's in the
It's
minutes.
in the minutes.
Alan's still here?
No,
Yeah.
He's not, no.
no, Alan left.
Alice is here.
You wanna make a copy for the rest?
It's on the website, I believe.
Well, I'm happy to just read it.
Do you want me to read it?
Would be great. yeah.
You got it?
Dear Town Board members, this is from Donald and Karen Gunning. We are writing to confirm for the town that our contract with Black Oak Wind Farm LLC provides that the turbine to be built on our property is required to be placed in an exact location and cannot be moved more than 2 meters in any one direction without our express consent. The coordinates of the location of the turbine are north 877434.09, east 796326.79. We have no intention of granting Black Oak Wind Farm LLC permission to move that turbine more than 2 meters in any direction, nor are we obligated under our contract to do so. Sincerely, Donald and Karen Gunning.
Okay, so let me read this section and see if that gives us everything that we need. This is, again, Article 3, Section 1A, number 2. And it starts off with property owner information and authorization. The name, address, and telephone number of the property owner of the proposed site of any wind energy facility. If the said owner is not the applicant, the application shall include, number 1, a letter or other written permission signed by such property owner that, number 1 again, confirms that the property owner is familiar with the proposed application, and 2, authorizes the submission of the application or an easement, lease, or other agreement of such owner relative to the siting of the wind energy facility. So it seems pretty close to that to me.
Well, I think
Um,
that a letter or other written permission signed by property owner that confirms that the property owner is familiar with the proposed application and authorizes submission of the application. Again, that's up to us to determine if that letter from Don Gunning is the one they want to put in to their application about whether or not they can put it on his property in
Right.
the place, or move it on his property. So that, if that's the letter that they want to consider us having received, then
We can evaluate
then
that
we
when
can
we
evaluate that through
everything
the
else.
review process.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my concern is, if we go to section 17, this is page 15. Number 2, property line. 100 feet or 1.1 times the blade radius sweep measurement, whichever is greater, from the property lines between site and any adjacent property owners, unless the neighboring landowner has consented otherwise pursuant to a written lease, easement, or other agreement regarding the WTG or the wind energy facility. And this is basically the following standards and requirements shall apply. And so this is a standard or requirement that needs to apply. My concern here is that we do have a survey done by T.G. Miller, and I don't know how they did it, whether they did it remotely. I know that they use lasers technology. I know they don't actually put out measuring tapes and measure things. I have had the people that did the survey, T.G. Miller, at Donnie Gunny's property, also do surveys for me. I found that they're usually within a few feet of correctness, but often as they get longer distances, they get off significant amounts, basically. We do also have a survey that one of the local townsfolk commissioned and paid for herself, which again was probably done remotely or in some way not on site, that says that there is not enough distance between the pad, the existing site of the wind tower, where it's located in Donnie Gutty's lease, and the property line of Rob
Tesori.
Tesori. So if we hadn't had that other survey given to us, I would say that we wouldn't necessarily have anything we have to complain about. To me, my understanding of due diligence, though, says that if someone has come to us and say this survey is wrong, incorrect, it definitely would be negligent on our part to not
We can't ignore it.
at least approach trying to verify which survey is correct. Whatever the case is, Marguerite has stated really clearly that if they use that location, which they have to use according to the lease with Donnie Gunny, they will have to use a different turbine in that location than the ones that are on the existing plan in place. And that they do have to get approval by the board to change turbines. They can't do that unilaterally on their side. They have to get our approval to change turbines. So we need some kind of information from them. First of all, that what turbine's going to go there and that it does fit their existing survey parameters. And then I think for our own sake, we need to find out if the existing survey from T.J. Miller is in keeping with being correct, or which one's correct, or maybe neither one's correct. Maybe they're both wrong. I don't know. But it seems like we have to find that out before we can approve it.
Wouldn't that determination be part of the review process? And if we had a concern about it, wouldn't that be a condition of permitting? So like if we had a concern about this particular thing, that these are the things that in our review process we found inconsistent, and these need to be resolved before permitting can happen.
We certainly have the option of deciding when we vote on the permit application to approve it, to disapprove it, or to approve it with conditions. And if we decide that all the other conditions, or whatever other conditions are workable, we can approve it with conditions, and that would be one of the conditions we would want to look into.
Definitely want to make sure that it was
So,
accurate.
I just wanted to bring it up as something that we needed to be aware of in the process.
But if they, as she has verbally said, are putting a shorter windmill there,
Right.
is there a valid reason we can object to that?
They need to show us that's what they're going to do.
I don't
Would that be
necessarily think
covered
we
under
would,
the
we
second
can,
bullet
we would
point?
object to it even, but we have to approve it. They have to tell us. The issue is that according to the parameters of the survey that was done by this firm in Vermont, they cannot even put a shorter wind farm at that location, a shorter wind tower at that location, within the dimensions
Again, it
that
goes
their
to the due
survey
diligence
shows.
of-
Even the shorter wind tower that they wanted to put there won't fit, according to that survey that was done in Vermont. So then it becomes an issue.
So, do we agree that that's something that would be addressed in the permitting process?
I think it would be, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of, because I hate to be caught by the short stairs, find out that we didn't follow through.
So we're good with the,
Well, yeah, you know, it's a letter, there's issues involved with the location of the turbine. So if we find that the turbine is not in the right location, then we will have to go back to Donnie Gunny and say, this turbine has to be moved over here, is that okay? And he'll have to write a letter and say, yeah, sure, it's okay to move it 20 feet away, or no, it's not, you can't put it on my property anymore. So I guess that's why I wanted to note that, so. In addition, approval from the Department of Environmental Conservation is required and must be submitted to the town of Enfield for the following: Speedies, SWIP, SPCC, dust control, soil and erosion plan. Now, I don't know that that's required to be in place for the wind law application. And I didn't find it, and maybe you know where it is.
I think it's prior to a building permit.
It typically, a SWIP plan, when we're building a building, typically we have to, we may get the approval from the town planning board to build the building, even if it's even if it's a zoning anomaly. But after that approval, then we would go ahead and do the SWIP plan and submit it as part of the building plan application. So,
That's my understanding of
so
how it goes here.
I don't want to put us in a bind where we ask for something that we legally don't have a right to ask for, that's all.
okay, so you want to remove these?
Well, I don't know, I wondered if you had.
Maybe add that to the
I don't know,
the
this
list of
was in
questions.
Ann's letter, so there must,
Yeah.
this was on our list.
Well, this is,
sorry.
Guy would know.
You might, yeah.
So that could be
Be
added
a
to
question for
the
Guy?
questions for him. Although my understanding is that he did some review of maybe even earlier draft of this letter.
He wasn't part of the,
Oh, okay.
He's got a lot on his plate, though. I think we'd have to point it out specifically to him and have him say, is this okay or
Okay.
is this not okay?
Yeah.
For him to know.
I would just for thoroughness suggest that we spell out these acronyms. I mean,
Okay.
there's not.
And if anybody wants to spend
And
more
there's no
time with the
question.
Winlaw, I mean, I just read it for the probably 50th time this afternoon, and I didn't find those things as being part of the application process, so.
so I'll ask Guy about it.
And that applies to all these 5
Yeah.
on that DEC list. Okay.
Please date and submit all documents required by this notice at the same time, so there's no question of their finality. The board resolution also stated that there may be other documents required as are deemed necessary. And again, I guess I would just say I support to have them all together. And the main reason that I feel like it's important is that nothing is ever dated, and I
Yeah.
never know what's current or what isn't current.
Mhm.
So we might pick something out of the pile and approve it, and yet it wasn't the current one, so.
Frankly, I'm dying to put everything in a shredder and, I'm serious, the fact that things aren't dated.
When it's
Yeah.
not dated, you
It's-
can't deal with it, you
No.
just don't know, so
This letter will need a date too.
this letter will need to be.
Mhm. I have that right at the top.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yay.
Yeah,
Black Oak
and then-
Wind Farm may reapply for a wind energy facilities permit if this application is expired, which I don't know that there's
Legally,
any-
they can do
yeah.
that.
I would cite the resolution number here again in that previous paragraph.
The resolution, you mean? Where it says.
Where we say the board resolution also stated,
Yep, yep.
same as the first paragraph.
Escrow. Should I go on?
Yeah.
Further, in October 2016, Black Oak Wind Farm put $34,500 in the town escrow account, bringing this account into compliance with the Wind Energy Facilities Law of 2009 and the Developers Agreement of 2010. As the escrow was in compliance in early December, plans were submitted for further review by our consultant, Lavella. Comments on 2 of these plans were received on December 14, 2016, and comments on the remainder of the plans were received on January 11, 2017. That's a little bit misleading there in that it doesn't say that all the plans were not, it doesn't say that all the plans were not submitted. And I just wanted to be clear that,
I do think they were all submitted.
I don't know that that language is even necessary.
I don't think, did we submit the community resolution dispute thing to Labella? I didn't think we did, maybe I'm wrong.
December 14.
I mean, the most
Well,
current,
December 14, she hadn't had time to review the community relations and complaint resolution.
on December 14th,
On December 14.
and yet the most current one I have is February 5th, 2017. So even if she reviewed one on December 14th, it wouldn't have been their most current submittal.
Well, I believe that the point of this was for her to comment and them to include Labella's comments in the plan. I believe that's the process, or the purpose.
Right, it's just that if they had a completely different plan, then Labella's comments would kind of be irrelevant to the plan that they have in place now, right?
What plan did they review?
I mean, if they reviewed
What
a
draft
plan,
plan?
if they reviewed a plan that isn't the one that is current with Black Oak, then,
What would make you think it isn't?
because you just said it was December 14th and.
Well,
the-
give me a moment to
Okay.
find January.
Okay,
I
right.
actually am
What-
just
what
really not
is-
sure why it's even
Doesn't it
relevant.
say January
Yeah, I would
to even
6th?
be in there.
Cross it all out.
Right.
Well,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
in
it
regards to a
doesn't-
different letter. This is
Ah.
saying that I'm not actually sure if it's saying that these plans were received December 14th. Yeah, so that would be, these two dates would be when you received something from Labella.
I
How
She
many-
did
actually,
not.
I mean, yeah,
she
do we
did
need
not
this whole
She
paragraph?
did not review on December 14th the community resolution or the preliminary blasting plan.
okay, I truncated this language that was in Ann's letter anyway. And it actually, mainly because it didn't seem pertinent to me why we had bills. There's an agreement that things are chargeable.
Here's the
And
January
really,
letter.
it just,
Yeah.
I think that maybe what Ann is trying to do is build a record to show, but I think that the record is that on this date, they filled it. We had bills subsequent to that, then it became overdrawn. Doesn't have to be specific about what they are unless they're contesting those bills. So I don't
That's
even know that that
irrelevant.
sentence really needs to be in there.
Okay.
So,
So you're
Which
proposing.
sentence?
as the escrow was in compliance in early
Oh, because
December.
I've been accused of authorizing Labella to do things when
Right.
they were out of compliance. That's why that sentence
Sure,
is in
Which-
there.
sure, okay, well,
Which
we
makes
don't
sense,
have
but-
to be specific about what they approved or whatever.
Yeah.
We can just say that as the escrow was in compliance in early
Yeah.
December, plans were submitted for further review by our consultant Labella.
Period.
Period.
Yeah, so just get rid of this whole last sentence.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
So to go on, notification was sent to you on January 6, 2017, demanding that Black Oak comply with the developer's agreement by bringing the escrow account current by January 31st, 2017. No payment has been received. Subsequently, further review costs have been incurred and paid by the town of Enfield in February, March, and April of 2017. All of these costs are chargeable to Black Oak Wind Farm per the developer's agreement of 2010 between the town of Enfield and Black Oak. Due to these charges, the escrow has once again become overdrawn as of blank 2017.
That's March 31st. First. That's March 31st.
It is, except that if we don't, I left that blank because at the date that we send this letter, we need to have the accurate amount to tell them they owe us.
Right.
So
I don't
that's why
disagree
this
with
letter.
that, but that blank should say
For
March.
that dollar figure.
For that dollar number.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
For that dollar amount.
yep.
Beth, you're suggesting we update the date and the
Yep,
amount?
yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Per the developer's agreement, the escrow must be replenished within 15 days of this notification. If payment is not received by the required date, the town will commence collection action. If the town is required to bring suit to collect any deposit or review costs, the town, if it succeeds in obtaining a judgment, settlement, and/or other resolution against the developer, shall be entitled to recover its reasonable attorney's fees and extras fees and expenses incurred in connection herewith, together with any related court costs and expenses.
That is the exact language taken from the developer's agreement.
That
That's good.
entire paragraph?
Yep.
Shall we put quotes around it then?
I can.
I wouldn't think
So,
they
I don't
probably
think I
had to.
need to, they have a copy of their own developers agreement, it's
Yeah.
only 3 pages long, I'm sure they can read it.
In the bump back up to the subsequently paragraph, we'll add Black Oak Wind Farm at the end, not just Black Oak.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Mhm. Actually, it's not between Black Oak Wind Farm, it's between Enfield Energy and the town of Enfield. So do we call it Black Oak Wind Farm or Enfield Energy?
The board has passed a resolution acknowledging that.
Did we acknowledge something to the effect of what we refer to now as Black Oak Wind Farm is equivalent to its prior name, or?
Well, I may be able to put some language in this when I refer to the developer's agreement.
Or, you know, the
That
agreement
says
between the town of
between-
Enfield and Enfield Energy, now known
Now known
as.
as, yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes to my mind is having also read this historical record that I think Alice put together.
Or Sue probably.
Sue put it together a few months back. And this is a kind of an overview of what happened at meetings from October 11th, 2006 through October 14th, 2015. There are a number of places where legal type things happened. That my mind goes back and says, I wonder if that was done correctly or legally, because there are also a number of places where legal type things happened that it then noted months later or a year later that they were illegal at the time, and then they had to be redone by the sitting board at the time, and were problems.
Since about early 2010, Harris Beach has been employed as the legal counsel for this, and I would very much doubt that
Right.
any resolution was passed that was not prepared by Harris Beach. But,
Well, we
you know,
passed
it's
some-
all in the minutes of
Yeah.
all these meetings that
It
are
is.
outlined.
And I'm not really making an issue out of it, but I would just like to have an understanding. And I guess the understanding is that, for me, when I go back and look at the history of this project, and I see things like John Rancich, who is the project developer, being given copies of the current wind law for him to revise and change.
That's folklore.
No, it's in the record, Beth. It's right here.
I'm just kidding.
Unless Sue wrote it down incorrectly, it says very clearly that that's what happened. And people were told on the planning board, people that wanted to have larger setbacks were told, you can't have a larger setback because John just says he won't do the project if you do a larger setback than this. These are issues that are really kind of hairy when you think about the history. And then when you look back at the resolution that established this wind law, and that in 3 different places in this resolution, they made it very clear that in their eyes, this wind law was not meant to be interpreted literally. It was meant to be interpreted with whatever the current understanding
I
was
got that out last month.
of standards and needs of the community were at the time. And that their understanding was that they were not making something that couldn't be very easily revised to meet this current situation. And while that's not very clear in the wind law itself, there are places in the wind law that do point in that direction. And for us to not have an understanding of the history of how this wind law was developed and what the understanding was of the town boards that put it together, I think we're for me at least, it's not doing my job well. I need to understand clearly where this is coming from and what people really thought when they developed this wind law. And if I do that, then the process that we've used so far is definitely lacking in oversight.
So, we good with the recommendations here, and I'll make these changes and then, forward it on to Guy, copying everyone?
Yes.
I have one more thing
Uh-huh.
to change. I noticed in the law that under the definitions, it actually uses the language wind energy permit, not wind energy facilities permit. So I previously had suggested we add facilities for consistency's sake in the first paragraph, but
Well-
now so those should all read wind energy permit.
Wind energy.
So that, yeah, it defines wind energy facility,
Mhm.
and then there's a separate definition for wind energy permit, so those
Okay,
are.
wind energy permit, all right.
Where the permit would be for a wind energy facility, if that makes sense. So that'd be striking facilities from the last line of the first paragraph, as well as on the back page, a single line, Black Oak Wind Farm may reapply for wind energy
Permit.
and capitalized permit. Also, does the town have more than one escrow account?
No. No.
No.
Yes.
Yes, then I would suggest changing the town escrow account to its town escrow account.
Is there a name for that? Is it energy
Yeah,
escrow?
it's like-
Is it something like energy escrow?
I mean, it has a number.
It's true,
Right, but I think there's a title for it.
it is, yeah.
Do you have a budget?
No, I just have the account number. It says planning-escrow account.
No, that is.
That's what it's under.
called.
That's
Yeah.
what it's under, and there's
A-
another one for the aquifer study
8020.41.
too.
All right, so. Let's see.
None of
Maybe
good.
the word designated in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's designated town escrow account.
That was 14.
That's good
So
for me then.
further in October 2016, Black Oak Wind Farm put $34,500 in its designated town escrow account. Is that?
That's fine with me, yeah.
And actually, I think I should change that language anyway, because they don't put it anywhere, they just provide us money. And we do that, so I'll figure out some language.
Say paid,
an accounting.
paid for its
Yeah.
escrow account.
What did you say, Becky?
Black Oak Wind Farm paid $34,500.
To cover costs in the escrow?
Yeah.
account? Paid to cover expenses, treasury expenses. Okay. All right. And so, where do we see ourselves heading forward with it? When would we like to think about setting a goal to get it out?
I would say as soon as the town attorney finds it to be sound.
When do you return, Ann?
May
Sure.
5.
Okay.
No, May 8.
Okay, I won't be back until the 2nd either, so, or 3rd. So maybe we could plan on sometime after that?
Is
When
this a
is-
letter that can be sent without coming to another meeting? Like,
So
this
The
can be
meeting is
done?
on the
Right.
11th,
Right.
10th.
And we need to, it would be great if we could all sign it
Sign it,
too, as
okay.
we've discussed. So maybe we should just prepare it for the next meeting.
Perfect.
That seems
That's fine
logical.
with me.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think since our policy has been that we shouldn't ever decide on anything at the meeting that we first deal with it, that this will have been our first dealing with it. We could probably decide on it at the next meeting. Okay, maybe put it on the agenda so that people will know
be ready by then as well.
We'll enter into privilege of the floor. Beth, do you want to get the paper and read the first name?
No.
Oh, come on.
Mimi's got to.
Mimi.
Bueller.
Great job. Good job. I assume you're dealing with the date, once you consult with Guy Crow, the date in the beginning. As of this date, they will, because you left that blank.
Right, it would be as of the, so many days that we decide from the date of the letter.
Right.
And so we have to
That they have to have
decide.
the application in, or is that the same as the?
No, it would be different. The developer's agreement, I think that we've talked
So
about
I-
60 days or something like that as far as the application process, or the application
The,
documents.
Right. That's
But
what-
the
Review of the
escrow,
permit.
No, I
well,
heard
not
the
the
es-
review.
I heard the escrow one, that was 15 days, but I was asking about the other one, what you were thinking of, the date of the, that they hand everything in to you. So I just
Yeah.
didn't hear that discussion yet, so
Right.
I'm assuming maybe it'll be
I don't
next
think we
week.
got to that discussion yet.
Well,
Not formally anyways.
no, we can make that decision before we send it, but, or in email. But also, I am not under the impression that submitting this finally, or submitting these things that we're asking them for, begins the review process. We're asking them to show us that they can submit these things, and we make a determination. So we need to, I guess, talk about that.
Well, we would make a determination, first of all, that it's complete.
Mhm.
If it's not complete, then you already had a sentence in there that said, if it's not complete, it will automatically expire.
But what if it is complete?
If it is complete, then it's up to us to review it. That's my understanding.
Okay. I need to run out when we're doing.
Is there any other privilege of the floor? I move that we adjourn.
Oh, Marcus had his hand up.
Go ahead and say it.
Marcus.
Well, Marcus Gingrich, 101 Rumsey Hill Road. First, you have my sympathy. If you guys are asking for all of that stuff again, you gotta reread it all again, because you have no idea for sure whether it's the same as what it was before.
Whether what?
All that application material, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to reread everything.
Oh, I agree.
And
There's no question.
you have my sympathy. But the other thing, I was gonna, and it's probably not a big deal, but my understanding is the EIS was approved, but I'm not sure the application was ever approved, because I think somebody said that it was already approved at some point, and I don't think it was.
I will be reviewing that,
It says,
researching that.
I found paperwork today that says that Frank Pavia recommended to the board that they accept it as substantially complete.
Right.
With the understanding that they would then be working on the process of actually completing it.
Complete as in all the material there, or approved as in we approve the application?
Not approved, just
Okay.
accepted.
Right, okay, accepted as substantially complete.
Accepted as substantially complete with the understanding that there was quite a bit of very specific, detailed information that was yet to come. And there was no way that when this happened, this was like 2009. There was no way in 2009 that anybody could have interpreted that the application was complete. There were all these parts of it. There were 24 things in it that were not even done yet, that were not even begun yet. But in order to start the process, Frank's advice was accept it as substantially complete and tell Black Oak or Enfield Energy at the time that they can now proceed to complete their application, go into the secret review process, and do all these things that need to be done, basically. And Frank made it quite clear from my reading of what Sue says in here, that that was fine to do, that it was a standard procedure to accept an application as substantially complete with the understanding that then you would you'll fill all the holes, basically. I don't know the history of wind farm permits. Often with something like a building permit, the same thing will happen. I don't know if Alan does it, but many of the building inspectors around town will accept an application and maybe a set of drawings for a house. And they'll say, okay, I need this, the septic permit or the sewage permit from the Department of Health. I need approval from the planning board that says it fits within the zoning regulations. You know, a number of things that happen. Accepting it, the application, does not mean you think the application's complete. It just means that it's complete to the point where you're willing to accept it.
Right.
So, that was what I read in the.
And when do you think that it was accepted as substantially complete?
It's in this thing, if you want, I can sit and find it before I go.
So you're both referring to timelines and they're not the same timeline. I don't know which one you have, but it
see.
looks much longer, and this, I believe, was provided by Black Oak Wind Farm. And yours, that Mike, I
Yeah,
think, is
it-
provided
well-
by the
But
town.
I'll sit here when we're done in and I'll go through this and try
Okay.
and find it.
Is that,
place.
that's available on the website?
I
think
don't
it
know
is.
if it is or not. It's,
Okay. Yeah, it's
It is.
substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's available. Okay, I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I've seen it online.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you need me, I need to see.
2007, August 1st, planning board meeting. John Ranches attended the meeting, has reviewed the draft wind ordinance and says it looks
Looks
good to
good.
him.
Well, kind of my last comment addresses that, and that is, just encourage you to keep thinking about fixing the wind law. And as well the solar law, obviously. And I guess toward that direction, possibly putting a moratorium in place. So I think those things are important.
Thank you.
November 12th, 2008, town board meeting. Wind energy facilities local law discussion. 1.5 setbacks dominated the discussion. We don't have to strictly follow those recommendations, Supervisor Podofsky said.
November 12th.
At 2008. That's when they're working on the revised wind law after they had this.
It wasn't what I asked for.
What's that?
That wasn't what I asked for.
No, I'm just having fun going through this again.
I
I
see.
just noted a few things.
Well, in my conversations with Guy, he has pointed out, with that the county does make recommendations, but they tell you to stay within certain parameters. And Guy believes that the setbacks that are currently in place are within certain parameters. But they also the county said, we'd really like to see it at this, but to stay within the NYSERDA recommendations.
Yeah, this resolution
I also think the county planning board made different recommendations later on that aren't noted.
There's almost 3 pages in this resolution that explain why they didn't follow the resolutions of the county planning board and why they thought that it was okay not to.
So you're looking for the date that the application was?
I'm trying to find
considered
the
complete.
thing with, I don't know for sure that it was in, but I think I'm getting closer. Can I read this now, Ann?
I guess so.
It's got some information, okay. This is the February 10th, 2010 town board meeting. Wind farm application dash review for completeness with project attorney and engineer. Margaret Wells of Enfield Energy went over the responses to completeness determination document. Frank Pavia of Harris Beach Environmental Special Counsel retained by the town, and Mark Tarian of LaBella Associates, an environmental and engineering consulting firm retained by the town to provide technical assistance, were present to answer questions. Mr. Pavia mentioned that we are in a very preliminary stage in this process, and this is going to be a fairly lengthy process. At this time, the board can determine if the application is complete and also begin the seeker process. The local law states either a developer's agreement or escrow account is necessary. One of the components of the developer's agreement is the establishment of an escrow account with an initial deposit of $15,000. Councilperson Teeter moved to require the completion of the developer's agreement before we authorize our law firm and engineer to take any additional action. Councilperson Hearn seconded the motion. Councilperson Teeter amended her motion that upon completion of the developer's agreement and deposit of initial payment, the town board will authorize Harris Beach and LaBella Associates to complete the completeness determination process for the application. So completing the completeness determination for the application. To make a formal recommendation to the town board, and the town board would meet to vote on final completeness determination for the application. Councilperson Hearn seconded the amended motion. Motion carried. Then we go to the April 14th town board meeting.
2010.
2010, yeah. Black Oak Wind Farm application resolution declaring completeness. Frank Pavia explained the application was originally submitted in December 2009. The application was not determined to be complete at that time. A supplemental submission was made by the applicant that contained additional information and was discussed at the February 10th, 2010 town board meeting. The supplemental application was then reviewed. A memorandum was submitted to the board from Harris Beach showing that some studies and information is lacking, but the board has been advised that this information can be submitted at a later date, particularly when a draft environmental impact statement is prepared by the applicant and submitted to the town board for review and assessment. Harris Beach is prepared to recommend to the town board that the application is substantially complete for purposes of continuing the review under the wind law and commencing the seeker review process. That recommendation is conditioned upon the fact that those remaining pieces of information would be provided as part of the draft environmental impact statement and as part of the seeker review. Once interested and involved parties have been notified of the resolution, they will have 30 days' time in which to object to the town board's declaration to act as lead if there's agency. If there's no objection filed during that time frame, it will come back to the board to pass a resolution accepting lead agency status and issuing a determination of environmental significance under seeker, which is again either a positive declaration, which is Harris Beach's recommendation, or a negative declaration. Resolution 2010-33. Resolution of the Town Board of the Town of Enfield declaring Enfield Energy LLC application complete and commencing seeker process. Resolution carried. So that was at the April 14th, 2010 board meeting.
Thank you. I move this meeting be adjourned.
Second.